All right. We are filming. We're live. We're good to go. We'll line up cigars. Yeah, toast it.
That's right. Toast it.
Toast her up.
Welcome. Guys, toasting a cigar.
What are you smoking again? The Padilla.
Padilla Manawa.
Oh, Habano. Padilla Habano.
Padilla Habano.
Yeah. In Toro.
It's masculino.
I'm a fan. I'm smoking the Henry Clay stock cut.
And I'm smoking the Diesel Rage Toro. Full body. Ready to get my rage on.
Happy Friday.
Yeah, happy fucking Friday. We made
Happy
it.
Friday. Feel free to coach me up. Coach.
Okay, let me see it. We'll go ahead and do it. So you're almost there. Yeah, I'll just inhale like slow, mild puffs. I would say that.
Can I put this?
Yeah, you could cut.
Can I snag the ladder?
Yes.
Sir?
On the edges are not quite getting there.
Haha. Should have.
Yeah,
rotated.
that's why you want to roll it some. And sometimes I
Dude, your
roll it.
flint. Fuck.
Yeah, it's not great. My flint's getting a little.
There it
low.
goes. Your flint is so hard to roll the wheel. Look like an amateur. Can't even light my cigar.
Yeah, I'll roll the cigar some, but I'll just rotate the lighter
Gotcha.
around the end to make sure I get all of it. See, there's a lot of dead space when we're all lighting and shit. That's what I'm talking about again. But anyways, how you been, dude? Last time we hung out, it was for the UFC. Quite the card.
Oh yes. Have you guys had a chance to talk about that at all?
I haven't. No,
We haven't talked about it.
There's a lot going on in
That was like the best UFC
right now.
ever, man.
Pretty good. I like it when every fight ends with oh
yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that, you know? When it's going down to the decision over and over again. And the UFC knows this too, right?
Yeah, I watched some
so
post-fight.
anticlimactic.
I watched the post-fight press conferences, and everyone was like, "That was the best card ever." Like it was like nobody expected anything. Everything that happened in that card, nobody expected it. Nobody expected Rose to come out and knock out the most dominant female champ of that division's history, and Rose has lost to a girl that the champ has beaten twice.
Yeah.
So it's like, and all the girls that the champ has beat, Joanna has beaten. She's always the better striker, and everyone was saying that she's probably a better striker than Rose. That just Rose maybe has a good, well-rounded game, but then out of nowhere knocked her out.
Pads,
Yeah, crazy fast.
unbelievable. And then
Rose just got power, though.
Yeah.
To which everybody
She's got that,
kind of knows now, but they didn't know before.
sure, and she's got that stoicism that I didn't really believe in at first. I was like,
I kind of wish she didn't shave her head, though. Because I saw her with hair.
Yeah, she's hot.
I saw her with hair. She
seen
looks
a picture of her
good.
with hair, actually.
She looks really
I believe
good
it. I
when
think
she
looks
has
good
hair.
with-
Now she just
got a
looks
nice
like
smile.
she always got the frown face. She's always got the
Oh,
she's got the frown face. I'm
She
like,
does
put
it is
a little smile on your face, champ.
I gotcha.
You know?
Yeah, come on, champ.
Be happy. Come on, champ.
Yeah, come on, champ.
Maybe
That's
grow your
adorable.
hair out again.
Yeah,
You look like a
right,
sad,
right.
angry
Yeah,
little
yeah.
tomboy now.
Yeah. She does
So-
kind of look like she's going through some
Yeah, she's
formidable
just
years again, huh?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan.
All I could say is like obviously
doing her own thing.
she could do her own thing and she could do whatever she wants, but she would be more attractive if she grew her hair out. Now that counts for nothing apparently to her,
Right,
and
that's
it's
not her MO.
It doesn't need
Who
to
was it
matter.
that she kissed before
but it
she
would,
went into the ring? We're
but
like,
it would be
that's
real.
her.
Probably,
That's her boyfriend. Yeah.
hopefully, boy. No.
Just her pad guy.
Yeah, her having hair, I'm
Really
sure
close
she
to-
does. I'm sure she doesn't care because I mean she's a fighter. She wants to be the best fighter. Having hair,
Sure. And I
if
think
anything,
at
it's
that
just a
level,
liability.
yeah.
All the other girls, every other female fighter has fucking hair for the most part. They just put them in cornrows.
Yeah, I'm a fan of hair on women, but that's just me. That's just me,
Sexist.
and that's just
Misogynist.
that's
What
just
about-
me
okay, so how about
looking
this?
at the attractiveness of a woman. I still am a huge
Sure.
fan of her, because of her
Skill-wise.
skills and abilities. But I'm just like, man, you still have those skills and abilities, but you would look better with
but
hair.
Your hair could be put in a bun.
You know,
if need be.
she hasn't always been a shaved head. She had hair only like a couple years ago, and like there's videos of her. I'm like of her training and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, she's hot.
Yeah, she's hot.
She's a hot chick.
She's got.
Yeah.
As
Isn't
somebody,
that, isn't that cool when it's a little combination like that? When you have a chick that's a super fantastic athlete, or she's just a ruthless fighter, and
Yeah.
then she's super classy looking when she wants to be as well.
Yeah.
You know what I
Paige
like?
Van Zant's got that going for a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
The
Ronda-
karate hada.
karate.
Karate
Karate
hottie.
hottie.
Yeah.
The karate hada.
That's
There's
her-
Ronda,
her
cigar for ya.
Ronda, she was looking pretty good up until like the last couple fights. She got like super
Started to get
thick.
mom bod.
She started getting super thick. We're talking like, and I don't think. I mean, obviously it was like some of it was muscle, but like it wasn't all
It
muscle.
was it was
Yeah.
muscle protected by a nice thick insulator.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, but that whole card was fucking
Absolutely.
amazing. I loved that. You guys missed it. That Wonder Boy came out to Wonder Boy, which
I
was
still don't
fucking
know-
amazing,
I don't
dude.
know what song that
You didn't
is.
know that
Tenacious
song?
D.
I don't, man. Well, you guys are all about that. I don't know much about Tenacious D, man. I was just thinking about that earlier today. I
Such
was
a
like,
good
you know
song.
what? I don't know. I couldn't tell you a Willie Nelson song. I was questioning
I couldn't
my,
off the top of my
couldn't
head.
either.
or even like I don't know what's your typical. For some reason, I had the thought come into my head. It's like, would I pass like a white culture trivia test? When it comes to at least artists and everything like that.
Yeah.
Like Eric Clapton, that's another artist, right? Really famous.
I
But
know the
wouldn't an
name, but I don't know.
I think so. I think they're just names.
This
They
is
have
you
no
just
faces.
you hear
to them.
you hear the
Yeah, it
names.
was-
Well, there's like pop culture
Beach
music.
Boys. I could do. I know.
We know the Beach
right.
Boys.
I don't know the names of each individual guy.
No, I don't.
No, but I mean,
I just know the band.
they can
I do know NSYNC though.
Each guy's
NSYNC?
name?
Well,
I don't.
let's try it.
I know Lance.
JC.
Lance
JC.
is in sync.
And he had
Lance.
like a
No,
Latin
that's
last name,
Backstreet.
Shazez.
You asking me? I don't
You
know.
know, Gavin.
You know.
Then there was Justin. There was the addict. I forget his name.
I know Justin.
AJ. Nope, that Backstreet Boy.
Oh,
Yeah,
shit.
Backstreet Boys and the NSYNC
All right,
fellas,
so who
they
would
all
be
get
the-
mixed in my
Who's
head.
the? Who would be the NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys of the UFC today?
What? There's no boy bands in the UFC.
Sage Northcutt.
Sage Northcutt.
He would be-
Okay,
he would
I was
be the
thinking there.
ringleader.
He would be like an NSYNC guy.
He'd be
I'm
the
saying
guy
like the
that
the
goes gay
rivals, the
eventually.
rivals of like they're gonna be going
You have to
back
be
and
thinking
forth
like
here pretty
fight
soon.
camps. You have to be thinking like Jackson. Jacksons would be like
Jacksons.
the Backstreet
It's a little
Boys.
bit more of a refined
Yeah,
thought.
Team Alpha Male.
Team Alpha
That would
Male
be a whole boy
Up
band
there.
there.
I saw
don't know
Sage
enough about-
Northcutt's fighting with Team Alpha Male now.
Is he?
Yes,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is a
He's the
true-
biggest guy in there.
Yeah, he is. He's the
Probably,
biggest
right?
dude
Everybody's
there
like
for sure.
135. Chad Mendez has been gone for years. It
Yeah,
seems
what
like.
did
Yeah,
he
where?
do?
I think he
just-
tested hot, right?
He did. He
Yeah,
did.
that's
Got
what
I think a 2-year suspension, which just
I feel like it
confuses
should
me
have been
because-
2 years back.
No, it wasn't.
how come everybody else they get popped for something and it's like well now we'll do time served and then they're back in 7 months or something.
No,
John
and-
Jones is fighting once a year still, and then Chad Mendez has been gone since he's been knocked out by Frankie Edgar.
Yeah, but I heard that Chad, him getting flagged. It wasn't. It was literally for the steroids that they put in psoriasis skin creams that the doctor gave him.
Oh yeah, yeah.
and I
yeah.
know exactly what that is because I get it on my elbows.
That's so fucked
and
up.
there's literally there's steroids in the cream. Like if you read the bottle that they say that to rub on the rash, it says like it's a steroid cream.
Okay.
And
You
so,
know-
I literally have some just because I get a rash on my elbows for some reason every once in a
You
while.
why
know,
doesn't-
we got to go to Jim Jilbong's bathhouses.
Yeah.
We got to go to bathhouses, and you go into the salt sauna, and you just rub the salt on your skin. It
it
works
like a-
better than a fucking salt than that. Dude, I had like a athlete's foot, and it just wouldn't go away for like 2 months, and it was getting worse and worse and worse. And I was starting to
where you
get.
got it?
I don't know. I think I was just wearing my gym shoes, and I got it. Because the summer here is so hot and muggy that I don't know. Like
Here
I just-
being Seoul, South
here
Korea.
being Seoul, yeah. In the summer, it's really hot and humid, and I just got athlete's foot, and it just wouldn't go away. And I even got toe cream, and it just wasn't fucking going
Dude,
away
on your feet too. That's nasty.
until I
Make
went
you
to the
never wanna
Jim
take your
Jabong.
socks off.
Went to the Jim Jabong. I rubbed salt all over my feet, all over my whole body, because there's like a salt sauna.
Really? And
Well,
that
there's like
just
a
did it, huh?
giant. a giant jar of sea salt. You just dip your hand in, you just scrub your skin. It's like an exfoliating
Sure.
aspect, and it also it kills bacteria because salt kills bacteria.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think about it. I just saw the other Korean dudes doing it, and I was like, okay, I'll just scrub myself down with salt. And I didn't even think about my athlete's foot. And then the next day, I was like, oh shit, like my athlete's foot looks way better.
Instantly, huh?
Yeah.
I went
And then it went away.
I was
after
there
about a
with
week.
you when he did it, though, and I still get the skin rash on my elbows.
Did you scrub the
Yeah.
area?
You saw me do it. Anyways,
Garrett's
But
very
you-
skeptical.
but you talking, I've had this for years now, years, and I've been, anyways. But moving on.
Garrett's pro steroid cream. He's anti-salt.
The steroid cream does help. It just comes back every
No,
once-
I'm not
yeah.
saying you can't do it, but I'm just saying Chad Mendez, get on the fucking salt sauna.
Anyways, but my whole point was that
Here's
I
some
don't know
advice,
why-
Chad Mendez. Okay, take some advice from me. I know what I'm talking about.
All right, we'll move it on since you are intent to troll my fucking conversation.
I'm not trolling conversation. I'm just saying that's why. Just a little personal tidbit
Anyway,
addition.
but I don't know why he's still not fighting because he got popped, but then it was waived because he had a legit excuse, and it doesn't get much more legit than that.
Well, I think at that point, there's obviously something they're not disclosing. Like, I don't think it would just be like, it just went into the file, went to
Well,
the
he
bottom
mi-
of the stack.
he
Like,
also
oh,
might-
yeah, hey, sorry about that, Chad.
He also
You know?
might be doing some shit where he just doesn't want. He won't take like a high, like unless the fight is high profile, he just doesn't want to take it or something. I don't know.
that's
I just
not
haven't.
bad.
I don't know if he's in that position.
Yeah.
He's in the
Gotta stay
top
relevant.
5.
Gotta stay
Yeah,
relevant.
he's in the top 5.
I think that was another interesting storyline post UFC 217, was it?
Yeah,
Something like that.
Something like that.
Was
yeah.
basically how the UFC as a brand, building your own independent brand, and then as a brand how they promote themselves as well, is really it really caters to the flamboyant types, right? So we saw the ones that were talking the most shit get taken out during that. You know, it's kind of like a shift of like if you want to attribute it to some sort of, if there was like a moral fight that was going on, you know, the quiet spirited fighters kind of one. And then so
All the humble fighters.
sure.
won.
And then saying that to say this, if that is indeed Chad Mendez's approach of like, oh, only if I get this, if you're gonna win, if you're gonna get high profile fights, you got to be putting yourself out there. Hashtag, you know, what's his name? Colby Covington. Hashtag filthy animals. He's doing that shit with the
Filthy
Brazilian.
I didn't
Yeah,
see
he's
that.
calling like these Brazilians filthy animals everywhere, and I'm kind of
Jesus.
like,
Yeah.
oh shit, like I just
You're
like,
not Chael Sonnen, bro.
well, and he's not doing it cleverly.
Yeah,
he
yeah,
just
yeah.
like he just seems like he's fucking
Just
angry and
angry and racist and
yeah.
a dick.
I like
I don't
how
know. I
TJ.
would
I
it be
like-
racist though? I mean,
I mean, if you're
people
calling-
in Brazil, yeah, but it's
I
not
don't
like
know.
I mean, there's a lot of Spanish people. Like there's a lot of Europeans. who
Yeah,
are- I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
Spanish. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, then you have like the natives, and I forget what you call the mix between the natives and the Europeans. And then you have
Brazil's got like 8 different delineations of race.
yeah, sure. And then the transatlantic slave trade was most of the blacks went down there to Brazil anyways, or South America, you know. So I don't know if it's racist, but he's pretty much saying Brazil is a shithole.
No,
you know,
so,
if you're from there,
so he's
you're just a-
attacking. Yeah, that's what Chael said. There was a reporter that was like, Chael, sounds like you're race baiting. Chael sent. Did you guys see this?
I don't know.
So funny. It was like this dude with a
like Chael,
pen,
though.
and he's just like clicking away, and he's like, it sounds like you're race baiting when you say these things about Anderson Silva, and he's just like race baiting. I've never heard that before. And this is Chael Sonnen talking, paraphrasing, but he's just like race baiting. I've never heard that before. And he's just like, yeah, you know, blah 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 blah. And he's just like, you sound a little silly because Brazil is a nation. It is not a race. He's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you might want to take some notes and write that down. You got a notepad, right? That's why you always got a pen. He's just like trolling the guy.
Yeah, Kale's good. There's
like,
a few
if you-
guys that
yeah.
can do a good like.
Dude, it was amazing. Like
He's
he
like, how-
totally just took a shit all over this
Oh, and he-
reporter who tried to like be like, oh, he tried to imply that Chael Sonnen was being racist and Chael Sonnen just totally turned it on him, and the guy just wanted to change subject and he wouldn't let it go.
Hate how things gotta go there so fast anymore. Everything's got to go
These
to
days,
DEFCON. These days,
yeah.
absolutely. Everything, unless you're just talking with your friends. I love how Chris
Just-
the other weekend turned the idea of a safe space on its head when he was like, okay, when we can just sit here and riff with friends, it's okay. Hey, you're in a safe place, bro. Yeah, she's a cunt. Yeah, for sure. It's okay, bro. We're not judging you. You know, it's like, yeah, free. You know, and I love how he turned it on its head
Grab her by
because
the-
that's kind of like what it's come to is every time you enter into some sort of, even if it's just a silly conversation, everything has to be taken to DEFCON 4, where there's automatically an in group and an out group and us versus them, my ideas versus your ideas, as opposed to just throwing shit everywhere just for the sake of it because you don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. Let's just talk about what we observe and not get offended by it, you know. And it's so weird that you can't even for Kale to be saying something that's not even close to there in his perspective, that somebody else is going to take it, and he was just sitting there just tapping his pen waiting to say, oh yeah, right, and then a nice little you know, ellipses ... you know, filthy animals ... you know, black, and then whatever, and then it gets taken off from there, whatever.
Yeah.
I just hate how
side note, did you guys see fucking was it Matt Brown's elbow?
Yes, to Diego Sanchez.
Oh,
Vicious.
I didn't get to
man.
see that fight. No.
Vicious. Out
It
cold,
was insane. It was just
elbow.
it was just like it didn't even look like he set it up that much, and it was just like a huge, it looked like a Hollywood elbow. It was just so big and so pronounced. It was like it looked like it was out of an action movie where it was like where he just threw this, like, it was kind of like an overhand right, but it was an elbow. It was like an overhand elbow, and it just, like, he started it from here, and he landed it there. It was like it was like a 360 degree downward overhand elbow, and just knocked him dead. And it was just brutal, and it was crazy.
I will have to watch.
I was like, whoa, like that was amazingly terrifying.
Was that the same card?
No, it was like a
last weekend.
Yeah, it was like a fight pass.
Oh, bummer.
But it was crazy.
No, that's fine. If it comes off, it comes off.
Fight pass fight. Yeah, last week I think.
Anthony Pettis is.
Yeah, Anthony Pettis lost.
Probably, at least if it's not his last fight, his penultimate fight.
Who did he
Mark,
like
who did he
to
fight?
He fought
some new guy, right?
No, he didn't.
Not
fight
new.
A new
No,
guy.
he was
He
up
fought
and coming.
Dustin Poirier.
Ah, yeah.
And Poirier destroyed him.
Really?
Him.
Wow.
I heard it was a good fight though up until then.
It's good for Poirier.
Oh, yeah. I didn't see the fight.
You know, there were a lot of scrambles and everything, but man, he was just.
And Poirier is not even a big 55er. He used to fight at 45.
Yeah, he used to fight at
Yeah.
45.
Apparently,
Poirier's not great. Poirier's lost several times. In the
He's
top.
weird. He gets in the discussion and then he'll go down. He actually he had that fight against.
Well, he just
Alvarez
got
last year.
starked by Connor, and then he went up to 55.
You know, that was about 3 years ago now.
Yeah, well, then he went up to 55, and I remember when it was like, oh, he's at 55, and he won one fight against a maybe rank 13, nobody's heard of.
Yeah.
And then
might
he
have
lost, and then he lost again at 155.
Oh, he was looking big though in that fight with Anthony Pettis.
But then he
got significantly bigger.
Yeah, but it wasn't like he was undefeated at 55. Like he had already moved to 55 and lost there, and then he's fighting.
Well, the rankings
Pettis.
had him at 8. They had Anthony Pettis all the way at 13. Remember when Showtime used to be? You know, he was carrying Bellator. He was Bellator's crown jewel as far as promotion goes.
Do you see this new belt? I think there's a Bellator this weekend. And you see all the faces, and you're just like, old legends. It's just just, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
what's
they kind of a
fucking-
couple
what are
years
they-
ago.
I
they
can't
kind of
remember
had
anybody's
this-
name right now. It's
Yeah,
just a bunch of just.
right. It's like
washed-
Chris Lieben fighting.
It's just a bunch of washed up UFC fighters like God, I can't.
Is Shogun fighting
Andrew-
for Bellator?
Shogun?
I think he's in Bellator.
Maybe. I want to be.
finish his
He's out
contract.
of the UFC, I'm pretty sure.
I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah,
I'm gonna-
So that's
I'm gonna
kind of
look
what
it
it
up.
is. It's like you know, there's that new basketball league called the Big Three, where it's literally a bunch of like 40-year-old men, who are ex-NBA players who haven't had an NBA job for the past 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years.
Jeez.
Some of them going way back. One of them's like 50+ years old. Sharif Abdul. No. I'll mess it up. But anyways, nasty. He's still nasty though.
Dude, okay, so
Mbak.
one thing that happened, I know we're still talking UFC, but one thing that happened significant since the last time we hung out is Gavin and I each read our grandpa's memoirs from World War II.
Pretty cool.
Holy fuck.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Dude, do you have a grandparent or anything that was in a war or anything?
You know, my mother's father was in the service, and I don't know much about him. He died before I was born, so that's all I have.
But he was in the service, but did he fight in any?
He did, yeah.
Vietnam or
You know,
something?
honestly, thanks for asking that. I haven't talked to Grandma too much about it. Grandma loved him though. His name was John Mock. John Mock this, John Mock that. He was a big Ayn Rand fan. Ayn Rand fan. Are you familiar with Ayn Rand?
No.
Philosopher, early 20th century.
what
Or no,
nationality?
21st. Sorry, 21st. Wait, we're in the 21st century, early 20th century. She has the whole philosophical, basically, position of objectivism. You know, is her whole angle on things.
It's a
and
female.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So she was born in Russia and the Soviet Union. Came over to the United States, and I think if you want to maybe critique her character, what she's very much, she doesn't believe in altruism. She just believes everybody, you need to work. You need to work to eat. You know, there's no sense in giving somebody. I need to touch up on it to give it justice. But anyway, so very much she's like, Grandma was all about him and what he stood for and everything.
We only got Gav and I. We're fans of philosophy and we're fans of history, but we only took one philosophy class because it wasn't our major.
I actually took more.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I took some at UC Irvine. I took I took one. It was ethics. It was philosophy of ethics.
Sure.
And
Great course.
basically the course, it was awesome. The course was basically centered around one question, and the question was, can you determine right or wrong with only logic? Not.
We covered that in
You know what I mean?
philosophy 101 too.
Yeah, it was good. The only
Some more
problem,
ballroom, dude.
the only problem with the class was it was one of those classes where there was like 350 students.
What?
But did they break it up into discussion?
Yeah, they broke it up into discussions, but I think I got a little bit unlucky with my discussion class because my discussion class, I felt like the teacher. You hear.
Well, I see some butane in there still.
Well, that's like a terrible like $1 lighter, so it's very possible that it just is broken.
It looks classic. My little fucking blue Vicks.
No, but like the teacher that I had, I liked her. I thought she was smart, but I think she had like a crush on this one dude, and so
Student?
like a student.
Oh,
She
damn.
didn't. She wasn't like outwardly flirting with him, but
In
she
an
was
ethics
just
class.
she like only wanted to talk to him, and like I thought this guy was not that smart. Like
Right.
he was just kind of like the guy who just was. I felt like the teacher because she was a philosophy teacher.
Maybe he said a lot of things she liked.
No, this is the opposite. She, I think, got like super into him because he was like the only guy who would just outright kind of like disagree with her. And I was like, dude, why is this guy disagreeing with her? Like, she's not saying anything like crazy wrong. You know what I mean? Everything that she was saying sounded to me like, yeah, that's like pretty logical. That's pretty by the book.
Sure,
and this
sure.
dude was like, he was handsome, he was tall, he was buff, and he just was like disagreeing with her all the time. And so I felt like she got that little like, woo, we're having a little debate, but she was kind of into it.
Relationship.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and
Daddy's home.
then I was like, man, yeah, I was like, who the fuck is this guy? And he just kind of like ran the class. Like every day he would just disagree, and there'd just be like it was a back and forth between him and her. And I was like, this is bullshit. Like I felt like I had some actually good points to say, but for some reason I was being a pussy and I didn't want to like talk because they would be like so passionately like arguing and shit. And then the
just
class
alpha dogged him, man.
and then the class finished and I was like, man, I didn't really get enough out of that class as I felt like I should have. But I should say I didn't get enough out of those discussion classes. I really, really enjoyed the lecture hall with the 350 students because the professor was just lecturing and there wasn't any debating with stupid students.
I later hear the ideas.
I later found out that dude. Well, I was like, man, what is this dude's like problem? Like why is he just disagreeing and arguing over like shit that like it's I think pretty obviously logical and correct for the teacher's point of view, and the philosopher's point of view. And then I remember we were in a fraternity meeting, and when you're in fraternity meetings, like people from sororities and school groups, they come in and then they tell the whole fraternity like about upcoming events and stuff. And I remember someone knocked on the door and they're like, oh, okay, someone wants to give us an announcement. So we had our fraternity meeting And then someone comes in, which is like totally normal procedure. And then they come in and they're like, okay, hi, we just want to, let you know that there's this event, it's like Christians and Bible group for, Greek members. And it was like a bunch of sororities. It was like sorority members and fraternity members who are like a part of the Greek system.
Okay.
But they're like, they believe in Jesus Christ.
Sure.
So then this dude was in there. And I was like, that fucking guy is handing out like come to Bible study class. And I was like,
so he had to assert himself.
I was like, okay, so two things. He's a Jesus freak. That's why he's disagreeing with the philosopher, like logical points. Because basically the whole thing was like, do you need a religion to tell you right or wrong?
Sure.
Do you need a government to tell you right or wrong?
He thinks yes.
It's like, do you need any higher figure, government or religion, to tell you what's right or wrong? Or can you just deduct it from common logical sense? And there was all these scenarios where it was like, do you kill if you're driving a car, do you kill the baby in the stroller, or do you drive off a cliff? Stuff like that.
Sure. Oh, I love those thought experiments.
Yeah, they were interesting thought experiments, and he was just like butthurt and like angry the whole time throughout the whole class. And then I remember him giving out the flyers, and I was like, okay, so he's a Jesus freak for one. And for two, he's probably banging all the Christian chicks in this group, because it was like three cute sorority girls and then him giving out the flyers.
Gosh, they would be cute too.
Yeah, they were cute. And he's like, he knows that he is just like totally not wanted. So he's like this buff guy, like, here's a flyer. Give me a reason. Give me a reason. Like, it's just like, it was so like weird.
Go ahead. I dare you to question my faith.
I dare you to question my faith so I could just explode with rage in your face.
Yeah,
and like,
right.
and I'm telling you, the TA was like into it. She's like, I like him. He's like, he's not scared.
There was a group like that on my at UCLA too, and the chick that would come house to house with that group and do the exact same spiel, like, we're Christian and we're Greek and we're here to try to figure out how we can be both, like how we can be in the Greek system and enjoy partaking in the occasional party and stuff, and how we can still go to church on Sunday and be good people. And that chick was the biggest whore. The biggest whore. We're talking like my fraternity was like, like nothing special, when it comes to fraternity guys on the campus. But she had slept with like 5 guys just in my house.
Oh, man.
Like, I'm just like, what? Like, you're giving a speech to a bunch of guys that you've either already slept with or potentially want. Like, I could have slept with her.
Well, they have a very liberal interpretation on that scripture, though.
But then she comes to the same people and be like, yo, I'm Christian and I'm a good person, and we're here to try to figure out how you can be both. I'm just like, look, I got nothing wrong with you sleeping around, but like, don't be handing me a Jesus flyer after you fuck 3 of my friends. Like, you're like, come on.
Yeah, that's pretty silly.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Anyways,
I don't know.
One of those. I remember one of those girls. She totally hated my guts, and it was over the stupidest thing. I was at a party. This was before she even gave out the Jesus flyers. So I was just like, she's just a sorority girl, and she was nice. And I remember she was talking to me, but she always was doing this, and it was just driving me absolutely insane, because I was talking to her for maybe 5 minutes, which is not a long time.
Right.
But like, she was,
picked up a
you can't really
mannerism.
see it, but she like with my jacket on, but she was doing this. She's like, yeah, so like, I really think this, and I really think this, and I really think this, and like and she was just doing this the whole time, and I was just like, relax.
All right. She's like, let me try to squeeze this in.
She's
Let me
like,
squeeze it. I just have a little bit more
hear
to say.
you point, but
and I was like, after like 5 minutes, I was like, I can't do it anymore. I gotta tell. I was like, can you just like relax your shoulders?
Dude, she's just waiting to like.
And then she was
you
so triggered that I was like, I can't see your neck. There you go. Just be chill. Just be calm.
Yeah.
Or have a beer, and she fucking hated me for like the next 2 years.
okay, just
Well,
like
she's
relax.
probably been told that a lot of times.
No,
Or
but, and I even though it was bugging the hell out of me, I was
You're
very
sounds like
polite.
you're right.
I was like,
Yeah.
just just release your shoulders, just stand up straight, just be calm. Yeah, you okay? What were you saying? What were you saying?
Because
And
what
then
you're looking
she
for
was
is for
so
her to-
flabbergasted that I did that. She was like, "What was I saying?" And then I was like,
Right.
"Oh, I'm gonna go catch up with my friends." And I just dipped out.
Good move. Because she was trying to
Hated
spin it around
my
on you.
guts.
You need to relax. I can do what I want to do with my shoulders. And I think if you have a problem with my shoulders,
Yeah, it was like it wasn't even like a little bit.
You don't have a shell. Like you can't just.
It was, dude, it was absurd on how much of tension was up here. Like
Yeah.
it was, I was like,
Well, that could just be.
chill.
It sounds. Yeah, I wonder. Like, because I'm thinking physiologically, you would do that because you're trying to kind of hide. You're trying to say something. She's like, I should be proud when I say this, but I don't want to offend. And then, there's probably a lot of things. It probably didn't have to be just the Christian thing. She's probably just a weird.
I think she's trying to signal that
Interpersonal
like,
communicator anyways.
I already don't like you, but this is me trying to be civil and hold this. I'm trying to work the silliness of our conversation.
Was she
into
talking through her
word.
eyes too? Would she close her eyes? That would be.
She was raising her voice, and I was like, "What are you
Weird,
gonna
right.
do this weekend?" She's like, "I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do this
Oh, it's
weekend."
weird.
And I
It's like
was,
I'm not even talking to you. What is this? Like I just got a recording.
I was like, "Just relax."
Yeah, right.
it was bizarre, and I had to point it out to her.
Yeah.
Because I've never seen someone do that before, and I was like,
Well-
this is so over the top weird. You
What's-
just got to stop immediately,
Right.
or I cannot be talking to you anymore.
Sure. What's unfortunate is she didn't have a friend that could have told her that. I think what made it weird for her was like, I don't know you, And
Yeah,
then
it was
you're-
crazy. She was in like the hottest sorority, but one of the things you notice when you hang out with sorority girls is they're all in the same sorority, but they like don't even know each other.
Two there.
Yeah, they have.
Say again?
They have the most hardcore cliques. I mean, fraternities do it too. Like you get your boy. I mean, there's 80 dudes. You're not gonna be like super tight with all of them.
Sure. Thank you.
Like you're not gonna be like super close homies with all of them.
Yeah.
But you will know all of them and all of their last names. You will have drank and hung out and had fun with all of them.
So, but when you say clicky, when I think of clicky and I think of females and I hear clicky and I think of guys, I get a totally different picture in my head though. Like, was it still that same way?
Well,
Meaning,
in sororities, like there was some girls and they'd be in the same sorority, but they never hang out with the girls. They
but
just
they
have
deep
their
down
clique.
hated them though. Is what I'm saying.
They would just
Deep
have
down,
their
they probably
clique
just hated
Sometimes.
Maybe, I don't know. They just have their clique, and I felt like this girl, she was in like the most popular, some would say the most attractive sorority, but I felt like she didn't hang out with any of them besides maybe a handful of like the other Christian girls, and they were probably low key talking shit on all the other girls. Like I just felt like she didn't. I felt like she was an alpha phi, but I felt like she wasn't.
I'm curious, what was the Christian sorority's name? Did they
No,
have,
there
like,
wasn't a Christian sorority. It was just
Oh.
kind of like all Greek members who want to, go to Bible study.
Oh,
Oh God, who knows what the hell they talk about?
Though, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there
Gotta
are.
be.
Yeah.
Gotta be. There's
Yeah.
Christian everything.
Can I try that wild turkey?
Yeah.
Probably
Show the camera. What are we
Christian
drinking?
category on.
Wild Turkey 81 proof. I've had Wild Turkey 101 proof, but I saw
Ooh.
this 81 proof, and I was like, all right, I'll give it a
Spicy?
try.
Would you call
Smells
that
sweet.
I actually haven't tried to like dissect the flavors yet. I've been just in conversation.
Super sweet, almost like maple syrup smell.
But yeah, what is it?
Woo, that is sweet.
So
It's good. Sweet.
what is it? Our granddad fucking
Yeah,
landed
yeah,
on
yeah.
Omaha Beach.
Oh wow.
Beginning of Saving
How do you
Private
get to
Ryan.
Nebraska though?
What? The beaches of Normandy. Why did we call it Omaha Beach? Was
His
that the code name?
Omaha
Code
Beach.
name,
Yeah.
Omaha. Beach.
Omaha.
Yeah.
But yeah, the beaches of Normandy.
Yeah. No, so like he got to see Saving Private Ryan in front of him for 2 hours while he's waiting in a boat, just watching
Could
the
you
infantry divisions get slaughtered.
imagine? Wars won't be fought like. Well, maybe they would. I
Not-
suppose you'd have to
not
have
recent.
troops on the ground eventually. You couldn't just do everything via drone.
I don't know. It's like
If someone invades, if so, like whenever
That'd
there's
be
a
smart shit.
there's a
That's
war,
what North Korea is gonna have to do.
whenever there's a war to
Yeah.
take territory back, like
you have to have a
you know what I mean,
ground.
then you're gonna have people on the ground there. You know what I mean?
Right.
What's crazy?
That'd be so weird.
What's
They'd be
crazy is like
Taking advice from Siri.
I wonder if is there ever gonna be this would be awesome if it's not true, but I wonder if there's ever going to be like another like big war in the traditional sense where there's like two armies doing battles, two land
technologically sophisticated,
with
similar
with like
sophistication.
tanks and like maneuvers and artillery and air support and all that stuff. Not necessarily like terrorist organizations, battling with other terrorist organizations with like makeshift
Like
kind of
guerrilla
tanks.
warfare type of shit.
Yeah, like you could see like GoPro footage of like ISIS fighting
right.
other Islamic, sects, and they got like makeshift armored vehicles that they like, they just went to a junkyard and got some scrap metal and made some sort of tank thing. But like, what if like I wonder if there's ever going to be like another full blown nation with a proper trained armor.
Nations behind it. Right.
Yeah,
But
I wonder if that's ever going to happen again.
Of course it will. Unfortunately,
That's crazy. If that does, it's like what? There's like tanks battling tanks in 2017.
or
in
in
the
the
future?
See the U.S. not being involved in it.
yeah,
at
we will.
a very early.
We're gonna be
stage.
selling the tanks
to both sides.
to both sides.
Nah, I mean,
The tank industry is booming.
what is it? Yeah, that war was insane because it was like nation versus nation, technologically the same sophistication.
See if we can get you a sponsor.
Yeah, it was,
And someone told me this that I thought was crazy. It was white people versus white people. So, like, you could just put on the other side's uniform and just, I'm a German soldier now, and they're just like, fuck,
Just
and
act like
unless
a-
you say something,
Just act like a mute. I would just act like a fool.
Yeah. and then the
shell shock.
and then there's German Americans.
Shock, he knows English.
And then there's German Americans who speak perfect German, and then there's
Right.
German Americans.
Right, the world
and then
is
there's
too globalized now. How would you know you're
and then
fighting the
there's-
U.S.?
yeah.
You got everybody.
and then you have Germans who studied and lived in America, and then they came back for the motherland, and they dress up like U.S. soldiers and like ambush a platoon because they
a good
dressed
point,
like
man.
U.S. soldiers.
Did you ever see Band of Brothers?
No.
Oh
haven't.
fuck,
Dude,
you saw Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Saw that. Great movie.
You
Couple
should,
times.
you should totally check out Band of Brothers. Yeah, Band of
Yeah.
Brothers is fucking. What's crazy is I've seen Saving Private Ryan, I've seen Band of Brothers, I've seen The Pacific, I've seen tons of World War II documentaries and shit, and I know all this stuff. And then I read my granddad's memoirs, and it's like he's saying like not like some. He's not saying like some of the same shit. He's saying like event by event exactly how I've like
Followed the movie.
yeah.
Or
So
the movie
like
followed him?
yeah, like I'm just sitting there just like
Pull
dude,
back-
that's exactly the same.
Pull back the likes.
Did I say likes?
Yeah,
a
you said
lot?
like
Okay, my bad.
100 times.
Anyways,
But yeah, our grandfather,
Unlike.
when we're reading, unlike our grandfather's memoirs, it was a trip because I felt we were reading the script of a episode out of Band of Brothers or a side scene from Band of Brothers. It was crazy. He's talking about his foxhole and how he decked
during the
out
Battle of the Bulge.
during the Battle of the Bulge. He's talking about his foxhole. He called it the Foxhole Mansion. He's
Or the
like,
deluxe.
yeah,
He said that deluxe,
Right.
the Foxhole
Dude,
Deluxe.
At that
Yeah,
point,
yeah.
though, there were prestigious foxholes,
Dude,
Like if
our
you
granddad
you
had
that's what
the
I'm saying.
best.
He
But
was
I'm saying
talking about
that's
how-
what, that's what their what would it be? Just their own like status of living. Like that's how low the living conditions got. Where it's like, oh man, I got the nice seat in the foxhole today. You know, it was.
well, each
I would've got
soldier.
3 dead bodies at the bottom of ours.
Well, he made his own, and he said
Yeah.
you could get extremely comfortable. He put on the bottom. He layered it with pine needles, so you were not on the cold ground.
It's cushioned,
It's cushioned.
insulated. The heat.
He said it was underneath a tree root, half of it, and then the other he had like a I don't know what.
Eisenhower.
How did he describe it? Yeah,
Yeah.
smokeless chimney.
Okay, so he said that one, he dug it. It was like 4 feet by 2 feet, and he said it was about 3 feet deep. And then he said he laid the bottom. So he preferences. He's like, yeah, it was during the Battle of the Bulge that you realize like how comfortable you could get in a foxhole. He's like, there was enough time at that specific moment where we were able to stay in one place long enough to like implement some American ingenuity. And he's just like, so he's like,
It's like 4-car
so
garage.
he fully just explained. He's like, well, I found like a fallen tree or a tree root that was coming out. So it's like half underneath that, 3 feet deep, 4 feet long, 2 feet wide.
Yeah.
You lay a layer of pine needles at the bottom to cushion and help insulate and also smoothen everything out so it's not just rocks and shit.
Yeah.
Then he said he had someone else help him carry like heavy logs over like 80% of the opening and then cover it with like more pine needles and dirt so it's like insulated and like kind of, you know, protected and airtight and shit. And then he said the part that you could crawl in, he would hang a tarp or some kind of like extra coat he had over, and you could like pull it closed. And then he said out from one of the sides, he engineered out of an ammo case a little mini chimney, and he could light 1 pine cone at a time as like a little campfire inside his
And warm up the whole
and
thing.
warm up the whole thing. And he's just like, dude, he's like, that place was so cozy and so nice, but during that battle,
And it was all his.
yeah, and he's like during that battle though. So his job was he was part of the 187th Artillery Division, and so, but he like took an engineering course. Like his superior was like, do you want to take an engineering course, which was mainly only for the officers, and he was like, sure. And he talked about it, like how crazy hardcore the course was and how hard he had to study. It was like a whole first year of engineering school crammed into 3 months. And he said out of 400 people, 30% of the people washed out or failed out. And he studied his ass off like he never took school serious ever.
Yeah.
But he said his commanding officer like kind of looked down on him as like a fucking loser. And so he's just like, I don't know, something about the way he talked down to me made me want to do good. And so he
It
got
all paid off.
well,
Everything was
he finished 26 out of 400
good for him.
in that course. And I don't know specifically if that would led to him being in charge of laying telephone cables, but his main job was essentially keeping the telecommunications up throughout every major battle.
From the frontline infantry to the artillery, so that the
So he
front
would just
infantry.
travel those lines and
Anytime a line got taken out, so he was saying he was always out of the foxhole multiple times a night, having to get up because the line went down. Because artillery
so what,
shell,
somebody would
an
could
artillery
they radio
shell.
him and do that?
Well,
'Cause the lines are
there's
down?
someone would just
Oh.
come and fucking wake him
Fucking
up
knock
and
on
be
his
like,
pine
hey,
cones,
hey,
just
the
rustle
fucking
his pine cones.
yeah, they'd be like, hey, the line's down, and he's like, motherfucker, I've only been
He's
asleep.
I just lit my
Yeah.
my only
He's like, well,
last pine cone.
Yeah,
That was a good pine cone.
Yeah.
Dry.
yeah. But he talks
fragrance.
about during that battle, he's like, I never got to spend as much time in there as I wanted, but
So
yeah.
these are things that he wrote while in there. Okay, so
Pass,
memoirs.
pass,
Is that the essence of a memoir?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
after.
He also
I guess
said
it's gonna be a diary.
he also said he had
not very masculine, right?
he said he had a small case of frostbite, but he didn't talk to a medic. He said he just dealt with it in the foxhole. Where he lit that pine cone and he put his toes next to that fire
enough.
and he just massaged it or whatever.
Yeah.
And he said he sorted it out. But he said he would get up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. and have to go fix a broken phone line. And he said a lot of the times you're going through these forests at 3 a.m. and and the line was so stretched over the Battle of the Bulge. He's saying there was times where he's like he could be on the German side, he could be on the American side. He said it was risky because the U.S. soldiers could accidentally friendly fire, shoot him because they hear a rustle in the darkness, So he said it was tense, and he said it was extremely cold, especially because you'd have to scale these poles. And he said scaling these poles was terrible because you get up high with the wind, and you have he described it in great
freezing
detail.
cold, yeah.
You'd have to lean back to because there was no foot pegs, so you have to lean back. And he said when you lean back, your coat would hang open,
So
and the wind
catch
would
the
just
wind,
go right up.
shoot right up your nuts.
And then he was also just saying, he's like, can you pick a better target for a sniper at the top of a pole
Yeah, right.
for a long time repairing something?
Definitely.
He was like, it was unnerving.
And he talked about people in his company getting people in his company. He mentioned a couple times, and I imagine how many times did he not mention it, where someone just gets just taken out by a sniper. And he said one time he's like, right when he talked about landing on Omaha, he's like, yeah, and right about this time, one of the guys in our company got hit by a sniper. And the sniper doesn't just hit; he kills. And he talks about seeing like essentially his friend get his head shot off right next to him. Like, you know.
It was pretty crazy, that booby trap that the
Dude.
Germans let.
Dude,
How
okay,
crazy is that?
so
the booby
he's,
trap.
He's talking about like reading this and it sounding like a scene of a movie. It sounded so much more like, holy fuck, this is a movie than this one part. So because he's writing these memoirs for a while, you start to get to know some of his friends that he's talking about a
It's
lot.
Like, when the character dies off.
You feel about these characters. Yeah, like you knew about his friend Otto. And so it gets to this point where you know about a couple of the guys he's hanging out with. And he's like, we found ourselves at one time at this particular stage of the war where the German Air Force essentially had just like disappeared because we had vast air superiority and we had killed most of their fighters. And so the Germans retreated back to essentially only ground warfare. And he said, found ourselves after we had got back into German territory on Hitler's private hunting ranch. And he's like, I can't remember why, but we found ourselves with a Jeep and we're just driving through this beautiful, like, this is after the Battle of the Bulge, so it's like warmer weather. He's like, we're driving through this beautiful, like, open land. You look around and there's no one to see, and Otto's driving. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, Otto's driving. He's like, you see herds of deer running through, and it's just like super peaceful. And then all of a sudden I see in the rearview mirror fucking a sight that I was like, what? And he turns around, there's a German fighter jet by itself.
Fighter plane.
Yeah. Zzz, like hovering in on them on a fucking Jeep on the road. He's like, oh, Otto, hit the brakes. And all of a sudden, it starts opening fire on them. A fucking fighter jet. And he says it's his friend Otto, who you know at this point of his fucking memoirs. I'm like, Otto's driving, oh shit. And it's like, he fucking veered off to the right, and he's like, that's probably the difference between us getting hit. He reckons the fire landed just short, and then he hit the brakes, and then it landed just over him. But then the plane took off, and he's like, to this day, he's like, I don't know what that jet fighter plane was doing. He's like, we hadn't seen a German fighter jet in months, and why was it just by itself? You know what I mean?
You know what's crazy is, what if that German fighter pilot had a grandchild, and then he wrote a memoir, and they were reading it, and that was chronologized as well.
It was
like, you know what? And and I was gonna fucking kill these fucking Yankees, and as I decided no. It just went back.
Well, the reason why they lived, my grandfather thinks, was he said in his memoirs he doesn't understand why the fighter plane wasn't using his machine guns, because he said he was using his cannons. And so the machine guns is meant for that type of target, or cannons is meant for armor piercing. Yeah. So he was saying the cannons was like, and he said it was about like 60 yards between each hit. And he said we must have been in the middle when one hit low, one hit high.
And 60 yards each hit. That means it's still firing. I don't know how many.
I mean, how fast? It's probably going like 200 miles an hour.
Well, I think I love watching those videos of like the high powered machine guns, stuff like that, just fully automatic, because every 50 rounds maybe there's a tracer round.
I think it's every 3 rounds, but that might be on an infantry machine gun. I don't know about.
I don't think every 3, because they fire. I mean, like you could fire a three.
Yeah.
I mean, that goes off so fast. I think it's
probably every 5 or 10.
Something like that. Maybe for fighter jets it's different, but
anyways, it just gives you an idea on how many pieces of lead are flying through the air when you see tracers like bing, bing, bing,
it's
bing,
like
bing.
5 times more.
Okay, well, there's a whole bunch you don't see that are still heading your way. That's insane. The amount of ingenuity and thought and just sheer determination to figure out a way to kill another human behind these weapons is unbelievable.
Yeah,
we're like, humans are really good at killing other humans. Like, we're really good. Like, we're not repeat.
He said a bunch of crazy stories. Like, the V2 rocket that the Germans created. The Germans were like the best rocket engineers in the world, and they created the first rocket that could go into space, and it was the V2 rocket that they developed for like long range bombing. And they targeted. Did it
look like some Wile E. Coyote type of shit?
Yeah. It was huge. It was black and white, like checkered, and it was insane. It was just a giant bomb, and it would shoot all the way up into space and then come back down and hit London. I think that was their main target. Well, they got tasked with trying to capture one, and so they got some like last minute intel that there's going to be a rocket shooting off of a train track. So him and a bunch of people, they tried to go capture this rocket, and they said they were hightailing it to the location that the intel told them it was going to be. And right when they came over this kind of hill, they saw this rocket close up, shoot up
And then
into
the
the
train
sky,
just booked it.
and then the
Yeah.
train booked it. Yeah.
So did that land somewhere?
Oh, it probably landed in London.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think?
But
okay,
he said it was crazy. He never seen a rocket before.
Yeah.
Who knows if he even heard of a
that
rocket
was like
before?
the creme de la creme.
That
Yeah.
was
the
yeah,
rocket
the biggest
today.
rockets in
He
the
just
world.
It'd be
witnessed
like-
history. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
It'd be like us. Well, I don't know what kind of bombs we have. Like we know about hydrogen bombs, but like my dad said something to me when I was young. Whatever the government tells you about, they're just okay telling you about that part, right? They just know something way beyond that at that point. If you know about it, you know there's something even crazier that's out there.
Yeah, he told so many crazy stories.
Dude, so
What
how
was your
about-
favorite?
Okay, so my favorite. Okay, so like just as a history buff, one of the most interesting parts to me was when he witnessed possibly the first fighter jets.
Oh yeah, that was crazy.
As just a storyteller, one of my all-time favorites that he told was when I'll tell the story one first. So
you're saying the first jets, meaning moving from like a prop
No,
plane
to a jet engine.
like a
He
legitimate
saw a
jet
battle.
he saw
above
a dogfight 3
He
versus
saw
3.
a dogfight up in the sky. He was just watching it, and he was like, "Those are German jets, and they're having a dogfight with American planes." And he's like, "That must."
But he'd never seen.
But he'd
jets
never seen a
before.
jet before.
Nobody had ever.
Nobody
seen
had.
jet
Yeah.
weird.
This
But
is
he-
the first time they got invented.
But he said they seemed to be evenly matched, and he said they seemed that the jets weren't too much faster. But my thoughts were they definitely were faster. But my thoughts were probably they had to lower their speed because you can't have a dogfight. You can't shoot somebody down if you're going 4 times
passing them
or
at,
3 times as fast. You got to stay behind them and shoot them. So they probably could go a lot faster. But
or
they
maybe
lowered their
maybe
speed.
they're just at that time because jet engines were they'd just been invented. Maybe they're still just a little bit faster, but the weaponry is exactly the same. They
Still machine
shoot
guns and
machine
cannons, yeah.
cannons. So you have to keep the speed marginal to use those. You know what I mean? Like nowadays, if you try to shoot Gavin and I watched some history series about famous dogfights like fighter jet versus fighter jet in battles in history. And once you get to the Vietnam era and the Israel versus the 5 nations that they fought, Egypt and Pakistan, I think they fought. When you start getting those are like the last ones where you start seeing aerial combat because nowadays warfare is rarely nation versus nation. It's guerrilla fights, so you don't really see Air Force versus Air Force.
Yeah.
You might see one side has
big deal.
Yeah, you
if
see.
if another plane shot down another
Yeah.
plane, it would spawn into something big. It seemed like.
Yeah, we saw some of that in Vietnam because when we first started the war, we were fighting against Russian MiGs that the Russians were giving to the Viet Cong, and you had some crazy fights where the American pilots talked about fighting like you could tell they were amateurs in Russian MiGs, and then every once in a while you'll see a MiG pilot who really knows what he's talking about, and that's because the Russians were sending in like veteran MiG pilots to train the Viet Cong. And so they talk about sometimes being up against it's like they'll get like 5 easy kills and then all of a sudden they're going against a fucking ace, like a pro. And there's like, dude, this guy knew his shit. Yeah, I mean,
man.
yeah.
Like that's where like the movies Top Gun come
Yeah,
into play.
yeah,
where it's like
straight
those
up.
guys really existed.
Dude,
like
I
the fucking
highly
Achilles
recommend-
of the air. You know.
I highly recommend that. It was called like Dog Fights, I think was the name of it was a History
Savage.
Channel show.
So I wonder what it
Yeah.
is. You know, like I guess it's got to be like any other sport. You have to take into like the genetic.
You
The
take into
genetic
the
components where it's like,
G-forces,
well,
yeah.
yeah. So like he's physically like a fighter pilot like that who's just a G up there in the
Yeah,
air.
yeah.
He's able to take the physical toll, but then he's got like super acute vision where he's very steady and he's patient. But then he also put the flying time in.
And you talk about them using this strategy to be like they knew that their planes are capable of this and ours
So
weren't
he
capable
knew
of
his
that.
plane. He
Yeah.
knew his plane. Oh, so then he's like the ultimate.
Like, this plane could do
he's
that,
the ultimate
and then-
offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator up there.
Yeah.
Where he knows he knows his team, he knows their team. He's just the guru in the sky, man.
Yeah. So
He
our
can fucking kill you like that.
our
Unbelievable.
one story was like that where our granddad there was a bridge on the Rhine River. This is towards the very end of the war, and essentially the U.S. the Allied forces, the Germans had set charges to blow up this bridge, but only a few charges went off. Like maybe they fucked up laying the fuses. And so the bridge was enacted, and
That
so
seems like a common war story.
Yeah.
Well, we thought we were gonna,
dude, I'm
but
telling
then
you,
it really.
you read this fucking, you're just like, is this real or is this
Yeah.
like a fucking movie? And it's like, nah, it's real, and the movies are accurate, which is crazy to me. It's one thing to actually find out that the movies are accurate in a lot of ways.
With
You
the
know?
Right, with the
with the
exception
names,
of like the love scene that has to
the
take place.
names and the shenanigans that these guys talk about. Like he talks about just making fuck ups and saying a joke, and then it becomes like he was just joking around, but the people who he said it to didn't know it was a joke, and then that gets word to high command. High command makes a decision based off that joke, and he's just like, "Wow, shit, I'm gonna get in trouble for that joke."
All right. Yeah, 12 people killed over that one.
It's just like,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
fuck it.
As a history
Oh,
buff,
man.
my favorite part was when him talking about seeing that dogfight, because the Allied troops had crossed the bridge, established like a defensive position on the other side, and then he's sitting there as in charge of telephone lines.
So like what are we talking about, the length of this bridge here? Just like a
Well, I don't know how wide the Rhine River is, but it's a
okay.
substantial. It's a substantial river, the Rhine River. It's like one of the main rivers in Germany, but they're in wine country. So he talks about it's a great story, and I'm gonna have to summarize. But he talks about being like, okay, at this part of the war, the telephone lines weren't dropping, so I was just sitting there. I just got nothing to do,
Right.
and we're in wine country. So one of my friends handed me when I was on like off duty, because I had the telephone lines are chill, so I'm not doing anything.
Yeah.
He handed me a cup, and it's some of the white wine. He's like, it seemed harmless, and I was like, it's very mild. But after a couple glasses, I remember just uncontrollably laughing, and I was like, oh, this is getting me. This is actually really alcoholic. I just didn't know it.
yeah.
But so he talks about just sitting there watching the Germans time and time again attack from different strategies and perspectives and angles and tactics, trying to take out this bridge. And he's just sitting there being like, man, they really won't let us have this bridge. He used the word, he's like, watching the Germans try to take out this bridge in so many different ways over and over again was the most perplexing thing I'd ever seen. But so I just get this image of my granddad just watching just live action battles.
And he didn't feel like he was in any danger right there. Was he not in clear sight? Was he not
Well, the way he put it was, I remember I can't remember, I think it was during the Battle of the Bulge or after the Battle of the Bulge or before it or something like that. I don't remember when it was during the war, but he said there was the occasional, they were staying in some town, and then there was the occasional bomb, and he's like, I never felt in danger. None of the bombs landed close. He's like, but putting that in today's context, probably they were landing like 100 yards, 200 yards, 300 yards away.
Right.
So if I was in today's context, I'd be like, "Whoa, that was a close call." But he's like, in World War II, he's like, harmless.
Yeah, for
You
sure,
know what I mean?
right?
Bomb
You'd be
just-
like, shake it off.
Yeah. What are
digits
you?
on the left
You
hand.
scared because a bomb went off 100 yards away?
right.
Get over it, you
Yeah,
rookie.
for sure,
You know what I
right?
mean?
Totally different way of looking at those things. I
Yeah.
think they kind of went in. I think maybe just soldiers in general. I even admire the courage. At some point, when your number's called and you got to go up, you're going into battle. I mean, I like to think I don't know. It'd be interesting to see how you would react. You could always come up with scenarios like, oh, this is what I would do.
Yeah,
You know, it's like, but when your number's called, are you gonna? I think about most of the people that we see, all the tough guys, right, that we see online today, and they got their fucking vlogs and everything, or they got their blogs.
Oh yeah.
Anything, it's like, okay, what if shit really hit? What if that was, the bomb blowing up 200 yards away from you?
Yeah.
Are you still?
Who's
you still
gonna
hold
be-
the same premises you hold right now?
Dude,
Are you?
Adam Carolla said the funniest thing about that.
Oh, yeah.
That same thing.
Yeah,
he's
he
just
did.
like, you know Adam Carolla, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's just like, this fucking generation. He's like, these guys, they wouldn't be able to do what our grandfathers had to do to secure this country and to secure the win. He's like, you're telling me that some fucking 2015-year-old hipster is gonna look at that beach and take it? No, he's gonna take a drag of his e-pen and be like, I'm not taking that beach.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, right.
E-cigarette. I'm not taking that beach.
I'm not taking that beach.
It's not ours. We shouldn't be here anyways.
Fuck that shit.
Yeah.
But it was during that time where he's just sitting there watching the Germans try to take this bridge out that the dogfight happened in front of him. So he said he's just sitting there watching this fight, being like, some Germans came up with some new technology. This is interesting. Yeah. But he says some of the cannon fire would every once in a while, the Germans are shooting at this other plane, but that fire lands on.
Sure, yeah. You're just in the crossfire at that point.
So he said the wine house that had a tower on it that they were like kind of stationed at, just like every once in a while get hit by a bullet or something. And he's like, ting! He's like, all right, I'm going for it. All right.
Yeah, right. It's like until it starts hitting like my direct proximity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I'm okay. Yeah.
He told some crazy stories.
Well,
like,
there's my.
what's your favorite? Get to your
my
favorite.
favorite one, and this one I gotta say the whole story is. He said one day he was they were stationed somewhere. I can't remember. I think this is before the Battle of the Bulge. Yeah, but he's just like
sorry, man. When you guys have said Battle of the Bulge so much, I don't even know what Battle of the Bulge means.
Okay.
Like, what is the Bulge?
Okay, so there's 5 major battles, but the main 2 that I can reference off the top of my head that I know pretty well from the movies and history I've seen is 1, the invasion of Normandy.
Gotcha.
That's the big one that got us secured into Europe.
Sure.
There was some major fighting in North Africa and in Italy before that, but it wasn't until Normandy where the Allies actually were just like, all right, we have a secure force in Europe, and we're just sweeping all the way to Germany, and we've got to try to get to Germany. But so Normandy was a big deal, and our granddad talked about that. But then the next one is after landing in Normandy was a huge undertaking. The Germans were super well defended, and they didn't want to let the Allies land there, so they were putting up 100% of a fight. After they won that fight, though, the Germans were essentially doing a nonstop retreat. They never got to see the same level of resistance as the Normandies. The Germans were just like fire and retreat. So
they're heading north at that point.
Well, no, they're heading east across Europe towards Germany. They landed in France.
France is a little bit southwest.
Yeah, I gotcha. But so you said they were in North Africa too. I thought you were talking.
Oh yeah, that was before Normandy. Yeah. Okay. But essentially, once they landed in Normandy, then they're just kind of moving across northeast towards Germany, just slowly taking ground. And they have and the longer they're there, the more secure those places are, and they're not going to lose them again easily. And they're sweeping across, and then the Battle of the Bulge is in the forests of eastern France, I want to say.
Yeah, it was. What was the Bastow?
Bastow, yeah. Is the forest of eastern France when essentially everyone knows that Germany's going to lose this fucking war. They're losing to the Russians on the east, and they're losing to the Allies on the west. And everyone knows, and the Germans at this time had tried to assassinate Hitler, and even the U.S. troops had known that the Germans were some German factions were trying to assassinate Hitler because they knew the war was lost. And they were expecting the Germans to surrender any fucking day. They're like, there's no way they're going to win this war. We have such an insane presence here. We have so many nations against them. They're losing against Russia. They're losing against us. It's just any day now, Hitler's going to be like, all right, we got to surrender. But he just wouldn't do it. And at this time, when they're in the forests of eastern France, close to Germany already, that the Germans all of a sudden, out of nowhere, launch a huge offensive where the Allies are used to pushing forward and the Germans are retreating. Out of nowhere, the Germans just attack in the biggest force. None of the Allies, including the commanders, thought the Germans were even economically capable of launching such a hardcore offensive.
It's a Hail Mary.
Yeah, and so the Germans are just like, they just attack with a ton of shit. And they push the U.S. troops, the defensive line way back, to the point where if you looked at a battle map, you'd see a line of the Allied defenses, and then you'd see this huge indentation where the Germans had punched through, and they called that the bulge, where it's like you see this map of defenses, and then you see this huge inward arc because the Germans had punched in there.
That was kind of like they're one of their last ditch efforts to strong arm allies, right?
And
There.
they
And they called that because there was a bulge in the defensive line. They
Gotcha.
called the Battle of the Bulge.
And they waited until the conditions were like really terrible because the Germans at this point had completely lost air superiority. Like the Allied forces had air superiority, so they waited to do this offensive for the weather to be bad, so that all the Allied forces planes would be ground.
They had to do it
because they knew if they launched this offensive with tanks, then our air force would just destroy all the tanks. So they waited till the weather was bad, so that all of our aircraft would be grounded. And then so in the depths of winter, when the weather is terrible, that's when the Germans did all their last ditch effort and attacked, and the Allies were completely caught off guard.
Yeah.
See, and that's crazy. So
that's why it was crazy.
Yeah. To your story there, Garrett. But I'm just saying, back to that point of like, what would you do when your numbers call? You know you're Germany. You know you're gonna lose. Everybody knows you're gonna lose. You know, and then they're just like, all right, let's make a bulge.
Attack.
Yeah. Actually, we're going to
You know, and
attack.
it's like, a lot of you aren't coming back tonight, and they're just like, let's fucking go. You know, you'd have to, dude. You'd have to. Like, if I was in Vietnam, I would be high as fuck. I would probably. Or
I
maybe
think
not.
a lot of troops were, man. Heroin and pot was
they
everywhere
definitely were.
there.
But why would you not? I mean,
In Vietnam,
fighting. It'd be a weird way to go, high as fuck, right? Bleeding out.
probably better
Wow.
than sober.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
Dude, I've been paranoid riding a motorcycle high, and I'm just like, dude, imagine being in a firefight high in the jungles of Vietnam.
Oh shit! Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
But-
high on.
pissed.
Yeah,
But
pure.
one
Explain the Battle of Bulgemont.
but my favorite bit, I guess we're gonna backtrack. My favorite bit was his description of the. Garrett, can you give me a highball glass? I want to drink some whiskey. I'm out of beer. My favorite parts was his description of landing on the beaches in Normandy.
Yeah.
Because he said he was his landing craft was scheduled at 8 a.m. and the original the first force of landing craft started at 6 a.m. Earlier that night, airborne the paratroopers had landed, and also the Rangers were supposed to scale the cliffs and like kind of like a special ops, take out the obstacles. The Navy SEALs were supposed. The Navy SEALs at the time, I don't think they were called Navy SEALs, but the equivalent where they were supposed to in the middle of the night they were supposed to dive and detach and clear the mines that were floating on the beaches under the water.
Shit.
And make lanes for all the boats.
Right.
But shit got all fucked up. The Germans were really well defended. The paratroopers, they were scattered and it was a fucking mess. And then the Navy SEALs, like they had very limited success. The lanes were not clear for the landing crafts.
Right. So
the
those boats
Rangers were not able to scale all the walls.
Yeah.
So he's like, our boats showed up at 8, but when we got there, we couldn't land.
And where were they coming? Were they going
They were
transatlantic?
They were coming. No, they were coming from England. So they were stationed in England. And he was saying he took the Queen Mary the Queen Elizabeth from America to England, and as he was on the ferry was getting attacked by a submarine, and he said that, and he was like, that was crazy. But then he said, so they were in England for a long time, and then finally it was like, okay, here we go, D-Day's happening, and then so he showed up on the beaches at 8 in his landing craft, but his landing craft couldn't land because the infantry hadn't secured the beach yet, and so he was just there in this little boat watching the whole battle, and he said
that they couldn't land because it was like a shipwrecked junkyard because there were so many boats that had been destroyed from hitting mines or already got shot down. They were having to wait for boats to come in and drag out all these empty boats.
Like a traffic jam while you're just getting.
He's sitting there just
watching all of it.
Slaughter.
I mean, we're talking the beginning of Saving Private Ryan. Of all the beach landings in all of D-Day, there was I think 4, he was on Normandy when Normandy was the biggest slaughterhouse, especially because it was just they were. I think the night I think the battleships they bombarded the coastline and the bombers they bombed the coastline, but they missed. So on the other beaches, the fortifications were weakened more than on Normandy. So Normandy was
Omaha. Normandy is what they call the whole invasion.
no Normandy Beach. That's
No.
that's a specific place.
Yeah, Normandy is, but there was 4 specific beaches, and none of them are Normandy Beach.
I'm pretty sure Normandy Beach is a beach.
No, Omaha. There's 4 different beaches.
That was the code name.
No, yeah, maybe, yeah, but anyways,
Trust me, it was.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so he's watching all this chaos, and he's saying the noise was unimaginable. I mean, he's saying there's incoming artillery, there's incoming mortars, there's airplanes, Allied and Axis. I mean, the Germans and the Axis Empire. They're all flying overhead. There's ships exploding with mines. There's machine gun fire. There's rifle fire. There's there's bombers flying overhead. He's like,
Even just
the
boat
noise.
engine itself would.
He said the noise was unimaginable. He just had to sit there and watch it as like wave after wave of US soldiers
what are you
get
gonna do?
shooted.
Get out and swim to shore? Like,
Well,
let's go, you pussies.
it was a traffic jam, and he was like waiting for them to take
Yeah.
the beach, and so he's just sitting off the coast watching all this. It was nuts. And then he said as soon as they did land, he got off the boat, and then behind him, like off the boat, he got off, and then behind him a tank came off the boat, and then immediately hit a mine and exploded like behind him. And he said the noise of that mine blowing up and that tank blowing up was again unimaginable, crazy. People died, people got injured. He said there's dead bodies everywhere. He said the entire ocean was just red bodies everywhere. And he was like, you can't even relate to the dead bodies. He's like, I didn't cry, I didn't feel emotional. It was just kind of like there's so much craziness going on, so much data to process.
Sure.
He's like,
Where I think you're
all you can do is just be like, they're dead. Those dead bodies, they're dead.
Sure.
I'm alive, so it doesn't apply to me.
I'm curious. My theory would be this: is I wonder if in those moments, those are actually moments of really intense clarity, because your operating system is flooded, right? Everything. So you're stuck with just primal instincts at that point. You don't have time to sit there and like, oh, should I pick up his dog tag so we make sure we can identify them?
Yeah.
No, because you're seriously, your mission is designed. We need to get you from A to B. We want you alive because we want to also get to C, D, E, F, and G, and whatever. So it's like my mission. If I do this correct, and if everything went correct to begin with, would be like, okay, ideally I should survive once we get to here, and then we're in the most advantageous position to take the next point, right? So he's just operating on survival instincts, which happen to like coincide with the mission. So as he's going through all of this, it's almost like he doesn't have time to worry because he just needs to.
He just got to get to his. He just needs to do his
survive.
thing. Yeah, but he was saying it was crazy to watch that insane disaster slaughterhouse. But then he said he got to. Eventually, we took the beach, and he got to the top of the ridge, and he was describing this German soldier in a dress uniform. Like the German soldier was at a dinner party, and then all of a sudden the sirens went off, and it was like, "Yo, the Allies are landing on the beaches. You got to defend the beaches." So this dude left his dinner party in a dress uniform, and he took up his position on the embankment with his rifle, putting a bead on the Allied troops. But my grandfather said he just walked up to this German in a dress uniform, and he was like, "The German is just like this."
So didn't
But-
see him. Got him with the bayonet.
No. He said when he got close, he realized the German was dead. He said
so he had
the
gotten
German was
died like that,
the
huh?
German was like this, and he said a ranger had scaled the walls and then like knifed him and killed the German so fast and so unexpectedly. The German was completely unawares to this. He was dead so fast that his helmet was in perfect. It
He
wasn't.
didn't even have a helmet. He said his hat.
Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't
cap.
like he said his cap wasn't even like crooked or anything. He just said like the German was just He looked completely
Right, so I
alive,
got the artery
but he was dead. Yeah.
weird. Yeah.
And he said that.
or he was faking it, and he just pulled a quick one on your grandpa.
No, he was dead. He said it was like there's very little blood. It looked like he had no pain. It was just like he was dead instantly and didn't even expect it. But then he said when he was on top of the ridge, he looked back over the channel, and he said he saw a wave of Allied bombers flying in, like in perfect formation, like wingtip to wingtip coming in over the channel.
Oh, that would make you feel pretty dope, right?
Dude, he said
I could see
he said he's
of picking up your gun and going, "Whoa."
yeah, it's exactly what he
could
felt.
see
He was
you
like I felt so like confident.
Yeah,
I felt
dope.
so like pumped. But I mean,
You're watching
until
this
that,
whole other infantry
Yeah,
that
yeah.
has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
You're just everybody's taking orders from the top, and then you're just like, well, I hope they did their job.
Yeah.
And then you see like the two jobs coming together, right? So you had mentioned earlier that, the SEALs or whatever the equivalent to them were to come in and they were to clear a path and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah.
But that wasn't able to take place. So you're like,
yeah.
oh, fuck.
Yeah, and he's
but you can't just say that.
all
The fucking
morning,
SEALs,
all morning he's
then it just works
watching.
together, and then that's got to be
Yeah, he said
really
all
empowering.
morning he's watching this slaughter. And then when he got to the ridge and then he saw those bombers come in, and he's like, okay, we're going to win this war. And he's like, I felt so confident. I wasn't scared at all. He's like, we're
Troop
going to
morale,
fucking
right?
do
That's
this.
got to be huge.
Yeah.
Troop morale, yeah.
It's like you're like right there. You're scared. You're panicked. You're like, oh my god, what? How's this? This is not
You're
supposed.
definitely
How it's
doubting.
supposed to be. And then you see
Yeah.
the cavalry come in,
Yeah.
and that he said the warmth and the
Right,
pride
you
and
didn't
the
feel-
power.
frostbite doesn't
He says
matter anymore,
he's just like,
nothing, whatever
dude,
it was.
we're gonna win, and I feel so powerful.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And that power of we at that moment too, because you're on a team.
Yeah.
Like, and there's no like, well, you know what? I don't like to discriminate. There's none of that. It's like you're just on a fucking team right there. That is the way in and the way out. If you leave out, you're gonna leave with that team's flag on your coffin if you're dead, right? So it's like we're all we got. Even if I don't like this guy,
Yeah.
he's my guy.
He's my
he's my
homie
guy
now.
over
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Even if you put my daughter through college, he is my guy.
Can I get
That's just the
Yeah. Well, this is still kind of working.
the ultimate team experience.
Yeah,
I would say.
that moment with him describing the bombers in formation is definitely one of my favorite moments. And one of my friends that's
Was he pretty articulate too? Your grandfather?
dude, he
did
wrote
well?
it pretty well. And my stepmom is a great editor, and she actually went through and edited and refined and added to like some extra information from like the history of it.
Because my
to his
grandfather would
That's
notions.
pretty neat. So
he
they
would
put some
say
time into that, huh?
Yeah, he would say things.
My memoir would
He would say
suck.
things
It was
that
over 100 pages.
it was 120. He would say things, and then my stepmom, she would, in the editor's notes, she would go to Wikipedia and be like, okay, this means this, because he would list some military jargon, or he would reference a place that the reader doesn't get the reference,
Yeah, right.
So she did a good job.
Well,
for
that's
sure.
cool too to get a piece of like the inside linguistic, just the way that people, you said jargon there, the way they
Yeah.
would talk about it. Okay,
Yeah, it
here's
was
how
totally
it looks on
normal
Google
for him.
Maps, but
Yeah, yeah.
according to them, this was
And she and he and my stepmom added photos, so there was like photos and stuff, so you kind of get a feel of what he's talking about. It was dope.
Really
It was
cool,
really well done, really dope. I was really impressed.
Yeah. So, being that Gad and I were fans of stories and storytelling ourselves, and then like hearing that from my grandfather was like fucking insane. And now, obviously, those are my favorite parts. Those are like the war story parts.
Yeah.
I told one of my favorite parts, and I'll tell it now. What is it? And I told this to some of the other people. It's more relatable, and just had fucking. It had even coworkers that I work with here just fucking dying laughing. It was our grandfather. He said at one point he had to go out on patrol. He says he doesn't really know why, but he's out on patrol. He has to take a Jeep out somewhere, and this is before the Battle of the Bulge. So they're still in heavy combat, and Germany is not doing a full scale retreat. It's like they had just kind of invaded Normandy, and they secured a position, but it's still
a close game.
Yeah, still like heavy big battles. You know what I mean? He says he goes out on patrol, and he hears a bunch of small arms fire, rifles and shit.
Sure.
And he's like, but I wasn't scared. He's like, because at this time I was a seasoned veteran, and I could tell the difference between our rifles and our machine guns from German rifles. He's like, I could tell the difference between us shooting and then hearing return fire or just us shooting.
Sure.
And so he's like, I hear all this like this huge clatter of small arms fire, but I could tell it's just our guys. And I knew that it was just like a test simulation. And he drives up and he says, if sure enough, he sees an ordinance of people doing test fire of a bunch of different weapons that they have for some reason. He doesn't know why, but he wasn't at all panicked. He goes, he does his patrol, he comes back to his unit, and he gets back to some of the familiar characters that you've gotten to know through his memoirs, through his training and stuff like that. And he gets back, and all of his colleagues are like, what was all that racket we heard? Is there something going on? And then he said, just out of humor, he's like, yeah, unfortunately, it seems like some German paratroopers have landed behind our lines, and who knows when they could be here. Like, it's quite the fight that's behind us.
Yeah.
And then he says that him and his close group of friends, like Otto and them, they're like, oh, yeah, it's fucking German paratroopers are behind us. But some of the other guys
Like
that were around
the
him,
rookies.
the rookies that were around him, and in the like group of like 10 or so people, they're just they see like a look of panic. They're just like,
And you're just gonna go to sleep?
he's just like,
What?
we could be under attack at any moment. Are you kidding me? They're behind us. They're behind our lines. Oh shit. And he's just like, yeah, like prepare, get ready. And then they like, he's having this conversation, and then sure enough, all the kind of newbie rookies kind of like leave the little circle of conversation, and they're like laughing at him like, we got them. And then he's like, okay, but then it's time for me to go on patrol again. So he goes on patrol again. Sure enough, he goes back
Is this a boy
out.
who cried wolf story?
Well, he goes back out on patrol. He sees the ordnance people. They're not firing anymore. But then he comes back, and then when he comes back this time, however, he sees his friend Otto, and his friend Otto looks like cold-faced in full get-up. And he's like full get up in line with all of his gear ready to go, like for a huge assault or something like that. With their the faces painted black because it's gonna be a night operation. And he's like, "Yo, what the hell's going on?" And his friend Otto is just like, "High command got word that there's a German paratrooper unit landed behind us, and so we're going out to fight them." And he's like, oh shit. He's like, oh man, I'm fucked. He's like, they're gonna catch word like that it was all just a rumor, and essentially I'm gonna get in trouble for starting a rumor.
So when Otto knew it, he was just saving. He just went full retard just so he knew he wasn't. So people knew he wasn't in on it. Right?
Saving
so
James.
Otto's just like, fucking James, we are all screwed here. You look what you did.
Right, because apparently suit up, soldier. Right,
and he's just like, oh shit. But then apparently he said that they went out.
So much cortisol was created over that.
He said later that night though that his head commander did have combat. They met fucking German paratroopers that landed behind their lines.
Right. He was like, oh,
and
good.
They actually had a real battle. That his high commander got a silver star, and it was just like he's just like, oh, sweet.
Yeah, right. God. Good.
Oh man, I
blood
thought
was shed.
Yeah. He's like, oh fuck, what a coincidence.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, so I'm curious. So, what would be the discipline for something like that? Like, oh, what? Oh, okay, now you're gonna have to go put your life on the line.
Yeah.
It's like
I don't know.
Already there,
But also the stories about the drunk guy in their company.
Yeah, the drunk guy.
There's character. Like you read these things and you get to know the characters.
Just people. It'd be like us if we went there, man. Like we would have our things. It's like, fuck. Why does?
Yeah.
I don't know. Why does Gary keep wearing his shoes when I just cleaned the fucking pine needles?
Yeah.
Take your shoes off, Gary. Right? Everybody's gonna have their little quirks where it's like you still gotta work with people.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the drunk guy?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was this. Okay, so he was talking about this guy.
This is early in training. This is like during the war, but before they were deployed to England.
Yeah. He was in training for 3 years before they were
3 years.
3 years of training.
Yeah.
But so he's just what? Do you remember the guy's name?
I forgot the guy's
name. I forgot his name.
Training for 3 years. Like this was so the war had already started, and it was like, hey, if this is still going for 3 years.
D-Day wasn't until 1944, which is.
Sure.
But I mean, I'm pretty sure
Germany took France in 1940.
Yeah, like in the
okay, so this is before
this
the
is
US
years.
was involved.
Yeah,
right?
this is
but
years.
They were probably precautionary trainings.
No, I'm pretty sure the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor in 1941, and as soon as Pearl Harbor happened, the U.S. declared war on Japan, and then because Japan was allied with the Germans declared war on America.
Yep.
So it was kind of like, I guess we're at war with Germany too.
Yeah.
Our granddad had already joined the army, though. He talks about being in training when he hears
About Pearl Harbor.
So
yeah.
they just haven't called up all the troops at that point.
Well, they called up the troops, but they realized, okay, if we're gonna take Europe from the Germans, we're gonna need very, very well trained soldiers.
Okay.
So I mean, they were fighting the Germans in North Africa and in Italy before D-Day, and they were fighting the Japanese immediately, like the day that the Japanese bombed us at Pearl Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
That same day, like immediately, the Japanese also attacked all of these islands that we had. The U.S. had military bases on. So as soon as Pearl Harbor happened, we were immediately at war with Japan. But it took a while for us to finally get to Germany, and I mean to get to Europe. So my grandfather, he was in training for 3 years in preparation for taking Europe from the Germans. So he was in training for 3 years, and as he's talking about these various locations, they go to Florida, they go to all over. They train really up in New York or Vermont. They trained in the winter there for winter conditions.
Yeah.
So they're training because he was with the artillery unit. And so they were training for artillery and cold conditions, and they were testing out new gear, like winter gear and all this kind of stuff. But he was just talking about this guy who was he's just the drunk of the company. He's just like, everybody knows that this dude gets fucked up all the time. But he said he was amazing because you could never tell he was drunk by what he looked like. He said he talked very well. Even when he was wasted, he walked in a straight line when he was wasted, they said the only way you could tell he was wasted was he would just do crazy things. Well, he would seem totally sober, but he would just have the like, hey, I bet I can, jump off this roof and
So he's like
use my my sleeping bag as a parachute and totally have a parachute.
Right.
So he would just do the crazy stuff, and so. He eventually they're up in Vermont, and it's super, super cold, and they're training in cold conditions, and this guy's super wasted, and he just gets in his head, I'm gonna jump off this 2-story building with my sleeping bag as a parachute.
So this character is initially introduced. He's like, there was a drunk in our company, and he's like, this guy became immediately like notorious because this guy for some reason decided when he was drunk, when he was on while in training, that he was gonna get in his Jeep, and he drove his Jeep into.
No, that
the
was
lake.
punishment. That was punishment. He said that his punishment was to clean this Jeep, and they would clean the Jeeps in the river, and so they'd drive the Jeep a little bit into the river to clean, but it was punishment, and so he was like, "Fuck you." And he was pissed off, so he just drove his Jeep as far into the river as it possibly would go, and then the Jeep just sank. And
He just swam back.
he just swam back, and then so they're like, okay, dude, so you owe the U.S. military a Jeep, so your pay
Jeep.
is just going to go towards a Jeep, which ended up being his entire tour's worth of salary. So he basically like fought in World War II
For free. He's
and
like,
all of
this-
that was just paying back that fucking Jeep that he sank in training because he was a drunken
But
asshole.
probably also other offenses. But the first time he came into the memoirs was him driving this Jeep deep
Right.
into the river and sinking it and then swimming back. And then they're just like, so this guy's a drunk. Then later on, you hear it's like, and then there's what's his name, the drunk. Then
So
he's
funny.
hanging out.
Whose grandpa is that?
Yeah.
I just can't get over. It's like that's somebody's grandpa too.
Probably,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
that's he probably didn't write his memoir,
Probably not.
right? But it's
Yeah.
like that's in your grandpa's though. He's just talking about another person that's living that probably spread some seed that's got somebody living. It's like my grandpa fought in World War II and he was a hero. Not according to my sources.
Your
because,
grandpa was the drunk in the company.
but also you're expecting, because this is all happening in training, so you expect, and then you read about granddad's memoirs, you'd be like, okay, well, he died. you expect that drunk guy to fucking get killed because
Yeah,
he's
right.
constantly in his memoirs talking about like this guy from his town gets killed. He finds out his friend from high school was a paratrooper who got shot before he even hit ground. He was like in the chute and just
Yeah.
got machine gunned down before he landed.
Shoot, another
Indeed,
way.
yeah.
Talk about sit and duck.
It's like you train
Trying to turn.
Imagine
Yeah,
training
split
for
up.
3 years.
You can't even
You
play
get in,
dead.
you train for 3 years. You get in a fucking airplane. The airplane flies over German defenses, gets shot at constantly.
that's
Several people get shot and killed in the plane. Some planes get shot down
Just
where
as it
everyone
opens,
dies.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. This guy jumps out. He's like, "All right, I did it." Before he even hits the ground, he's dead. He just
Dude,
gets
that
machine gunned
That
down.
was it. But then it's like, but it's the 6 or 7 that made it out of that jump.
Yeah.
That and then maybe 1 or 2 live right there, and then that's how the story lives on.
Yeah,
but it's like it was still. In a
said
way, it's like his
50%
death
of
was
the-
still necessary for the mission to be. It's like he still did his job though. It's
Yeah.
like, you know what? That bullet, in a weird way, it's like that bullet had to hit somebody.
Yeah.
He did his job, and I, as weird as it sounds, I still see the respect
Yeah, yeah.
in
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
like he didn't die in vain.
No,
And
of
I don't
course
think
not.
anybody in the service would say that.
I don't think
either.
any
But I think
American
some
should
people.
say that.
But I think some people would.
All that for nothing?
Yeah.
Oh, we just wasted a good.
But it's
E-pen.
like he did his right.
E-cigarette.
Waste.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently, like the paratroopers had like 50% casualties on the first day. It's like
50% of them dead.
first day.
And they knew that going into the jump.
That's before they like. That means most of them didn't even get to shoot their weapon once. They're just
Yeah.
dead.
50% of them
Just
probably.
jacked out, man.
Yeah. Anyways,
Crazy.
But, so this drunk guy is a returning character, and at one point, this is still before Normandy.
I love that. He's a returning
yeah.
character.
He He said that he had been hanging out with the paratroopers because they're in the artillery brigade, but he'd been hanging out with the paratroopers, and then he was drunk and was like, I can make. I hung out with the paratroopers. They told me how to make a parachute. I can make a parachute out of fucking anything. I can make a parachute out of my freaking sleeping sack. And they're just like,
Oh my
he said he's just like, no, you can't.
Super
Like,
easy.
You can't fucking
confident
make,
too.
Yeah, he's
huh?
like, you can't make a parachute out of your
I
fucking
can rap
sleeping
about
sack.
anything. What was it? What movie was that? Malibu's Most Wanted. Yeah.
Haven't seen it.
Oh man, it just reminds me. I could rap about anything.
I know that movie, but I
he
haven't
just
seen
this
it.
white rapper.
That's funny.
That's funny. I can make a parachute out of anything.
But apparently, they're like, no, you can't.
It's like,
And
no,
he
you
said,
can't, and you shouldn't.
And he said, yes, I
You
can.
should not make a parachute out of everything.
So this guy apparently sewed together over labor I don't know how long it takes to make a parachute. He made some kind of makeshift parachute, climbs on top of a 2-story building. Yeah, fucking 2 stories. That's like what? Like fucking
22 feet.
Yeah, more. Yeah, maybe more than that. This guy climbs on top of it, and he said underneath him is like hard, compact ice and snow.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
fucking soft. It's not like a soft snow.
I got it.
This
man.
guy jumps off, and they're just like, sure enough, his chute didn't open, and he hit the ground fucking hard. They're like, and they're like, and to this day we think because he was drunk, he probably was able to get
probably
out of it okay.
survived it, yeah.
we
That
were
was
all
what he
convinced
needed.
that had he been sober, he would have broke both of his legs.
Yeah, right.
But he just hit the ground hard with a
Just-
couple grunts, gets up, and then
Flubber
just
style.
walks away with nothing to say.
Doesn't say a word. Just goes to bed
with
He's
a
just-
limp.
Just limps to his bed.
Oh,
just goes to
man.
sleep.
The defeated nail
So this guy,
scurries back.
so
to
this
his
guy
side.
then disappears, and then he talks about the invasion of Normandy, like all the small stories about him being in like French towns and sleeping like in French houses. Him and like talking about not taking his shoes off for 50 days, not even to change his socks
Wow.
for 50 days.
Wow.
Talking about climbing poles in the ice and snow and the howling winds, thinking
The
like
things
I
you'll do,
can't
though.
feel my hands, and like nothing's more miserable than the fact of being in that cold, except for the fact that on top of being in that cold, you know that you're exhausted because you haven't slept right, and at any moment you could just get shot by a
Somebody's
sniper.
just fucking eating
Because
a
you're
sandwich.
on the top of a
Look up,
pole,
yeah.
like the easiest target.
And also a telecommunications guys, like what would be a better target than
Yeah.
a telecommunications guys? It's like take out their communication
It
tower.
would just be fun because if
Yeah.
they feel anything like your grandfather did, where it's like, yeah, I got idle time. Oh shit, hey, we got one.
yeah,
You know,
and
it's like,
and what he's
go
doing
for
is
it.
he's trying to repair the cables from the infantry to the artillery. So if you can't repair that cable, then the infantry doesn't have artillery support. So it's like
Okay, so he's
that
a-
is a
he's a
very
main target.
valued target. Yeah, yeah. And he was saying it was unnerving.
Weird.
Yeah. So imagine the stress of that. But he talks about all these small stories. Talks about fucking having a fighter jet zero in on him and his buddies driving a Jeep.
Right.
And it's like all kinds of crazy stories. And then he gets to that story of the Rhine River.
A lifetime in just
Yeah.
a couple. How long was he over there? A couple months.
No, it was like a year probably.
A year.
Almost.
Just a lifetime
Yeah.
of insane stories, insane bounce. Just chaotic story after chaotic story.
Yeah.
Where we're just like, oh, dude, I lost my phone in Itaewon.
Yeah.
Fucking nuts, dude. Oh, remember those guys, the fucking Three Stooges. Ah.
So, yeah.
you
Tell
know?
me about it. I'm all about stories, and then all of a sudden I read this, and I'm like, I got shit compared to my
Intense.
granddad.
Yeah.
But he gets all the way through all the shit. He talks about all this crazy stuff. He talks about guys that he knows personally getting killed. And you're just wondering the whole time, like, how much are you not talking about? You know what I mean? Like,
Well, how much-
How much did you forget?
how
even?
much did you
Yeah.
forget,
It's
and
like
how
if
much
he was
did you
like,
not
oh, I
say?
should have also included that,
Yeah.
he was naked when he jumped off
Yeah.
with the chute,
Yeah. It's like, and how many people did you see get killed that you didn't go to high school with, that you just didn't feel like talking about? You know what I mean?
Dude, you'd have so much to.
So he's talking about all these stories, and then he gets to this story about the Battle of the Rhine River, which is late in the war. This is when the jets are coming in. They're fighting over this bridge. And he says that while they're fighting over this bridge, he's seeing these jets flying over him, and he's seeing the first jets ever and all this shit of all time. And he says while they're sitting there in wine country, he got drunk off that wine at one point, and apparently he's just like, and then that drunk guy, apparently he got a hold of some of that wine, and then you're just like, he's still alive, like he fucking lived
Just
through
heard
all
his
that
voice
guy.
like over the
Yeah,
gunfire.
and I'm
or
just,
something.
it's just like the triumphant return of the drunk guy. He fucking survived all that shit, and sure enough, he's drunk,
cockroach.
like in wine country again. Apparently, he ran up, and they have all these defensive positions around the bridge. And apparently, he got up and got on a 50 caliber anti-aircraft machine gun and just started going and shooting up into the sky, like fucking shooting a machine gun like crazy. And he said several people in his company had to fucking, like, as he's going crazy, like, we'll get you, just shooting into the sky for no reason other than the fact that he's just wasted. Had to fucking, like, wrestle him down to the ground and fucking, like, take him off this
Wasted.
machine gun and be like, you fucking drunk idiot.
Dude, he's drunk, but then also on top of that, probably the immediate, they call it post-traumatic stress, or I guess what would you call it if it's in the moment, like immediate traumatic stress
Immediate,
disorder,
yeah,
it's like
yeah.
it's right there.
Well, it's
The
not
dude's
really
just fucking-
immediate. He's been just living it for like.
But he's
6
number
months.
one, he's drinking because he's trying to escape his mind.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, then you got a guy who's not in his right mind, escaping the mind that, it's just
escaping
this
the
has become
circumstances.
crazy. Yeah, he's already trying to escape, but then he's thrown into this super high stressful situation.
Before
What a crazy
I wanna
guy.
hear-
But it's funny though. The
Yeah.
funny part is that he's still there.
It's just like,
he's
he's
still there.
alive
He's
still.
got
He's
it.
made it,
He's
yeah.
still
And
found a
he's-
way to eat.
and he's still
still
drunk.
Found a way.
He found his drink. It's like the second out, like literally, it's the first time in the whole thing that it's like alcohol is a factor, and it's just like, sure enough, he's back. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like he made it back into my grandfather's memoirs, and it's like how many people didn't make it in my grandfather's
Yeah.
memoirs?
Yeah.
And it's like
He was
the
on
second
page
they
4
get to
and he was
wine
on page
country,
104.
yeah, it's like the second
Yeah.
they get to wine country, the drunk guy is back in the stories. You know what I mean?
That's
But
funny.
it's crazy. Is the whole first part of the memoirs is not has nothing to do with military. It's just him growing up in rural farm country Tennessee
During the Great Depression.
During the Great Depression, like his whole childhood and everything.
Yeah.
And it's nuts because it's like very Tom Sawyer esque. He's talking about no electricity. He's talking about outhouses. He's talking about fishing and farming and stuff like that. He's talking about like country fairs. He's talking about like courting girls, but there's not too many people have automobiles. So if you want to go to the fair with a girl, you had to like buy a ride. But because it was so expensive, because not that many people had a car, it was kind of like you'd have to date in groups. So it was like me, I got a date, my buddies got a date, my buddies got a date. And it was like 4 couples go on a date to the fair.
Dude, he fucking talked about one of his childhood friends was a black kid, and he talked about how like they'd be friends, but they'd fight sometimes, like friends do. And he'd be like, yeah, sometimes we'd be in the middle of some fight as a childhood friends, and I'd say, you're black though. And he'd say, I am not black, I am brown. And then
Like that was the
yeah,
kid's main
that was the
argument. He's
kid's
like, I'm
main
not
argu-
black.
yeah.
Stop calling me black. I'm
Yeah.
brown.
And
And
then-
that was his main
yeah.
argument. Yeah.
And then he's like, but as soon as the parents got wind of it, we both received equal punishment.
and they would be forced to like sit next to each other, like really, really close, but not so close that they would touch. He was like, they'd make us sit so close to each other, but there would still be like a little, like an inch separation. And he was saying there was the black kid's mom would punish him. It was like, you guys got to sit there until you're friends again and you apologize. And he was like, shit.
That's
and then
dope.
he was saying they would go to the movies, him and a bunch of his buddies, they would save up money and then go to the movies. And he was like, yeah. And then like my black friend, he would have to go up to the black section, and we never thought anything. We didn't think
It's just
anything
like,
of
hey,
it.
man, catch you after the show.
Yeah, he was like, it was
This
just
is in
normal.
Tennessee.
This is in Tennessee, you know,
Dude, you
before
wouldn't know.
Jim
Dude,
Crow.
that's what it's like now.
Segregation.
Like we have to go to separate bathrooms now, but in 50 years, everybody's gonna be using the same bathroom.
But he also talks about that black family. He also talks about that black family, how he talks about their names. He's like this is their name, but this was their new name
Oh,
because
yeah,
they had a slave name
Yeah.
that they had shed. That was like this was their slave name, but this black family decided to
Convert to Islam, probably.
Well, no, not a Karl Marx shit, or not Karl Marx, Malcolm X.
Yeah, Islam. Yeah,
I
the
know
nation.
they were Islam, but they
And
said-
Muhammad Ali.
yeah, and Muhammad Ali. But they said that he's just like, this was their slave name, but this is their new name. And I'm just like, whoa, like
Yeah.
your friend's family had a slave name
Yeah.
that they decided to abandon and then reincorporate
Yeah,
their
dude.
free name.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, holy shit.
Yeah, our
Yeah.
father was born in 21, I think.
No,
Or
younger than that.
Younger than
It
that?
was the teens.
Yeah, it was
'Cause I remember when I-
1919, I think.
Yeah,
I feel like that number.
No, I think it was 1912.
I don't know. It was. I think my grandfather passed away when he was 93 or 91. I can't remember.
I think some is.
I'm curious when your
I was gonna say 92, so we're both
Something
close.
like that. Yeah.
when
But-
your grandfather was over there serving. Is this your mother's father or your
Dad's father.
Dad's father.
Was your dad already conceived at that
No,
point
no,
or no?
It wa-
Yeah,
my
so-
dad's a baby boomer, so it wasn't until he came back.
Okay.
And one thing that I thought was interesting is, like, I didn't really know my grandfather that well. My grandfather's name was James,
Okay.
and my middle name is James. So, I took the name after him.
You just have just real quick memories of him, maybe when you were 6 or 7 years old.
well, I mean,
No, we knew most of our lives, but he lived in Tennessee,
yeah.
so we
Oh,
didn't see him
okay.
that much.
So, but I mean, I didn't really know him, and it was cool to read his memoirs because he's talking about his childhood.
Another drink of that there.
He's also talking about his dad, so our great grandfather, and our great
Bob Bertram.
In the memoir.
in the memoir, and it was super interesting because like our great grandfather, is raising a family during the Depression.
Our great grandfather fought in World War One.
Yeah, he fought in World War One.
One, and then World War Two.
Yeah, and then he's talking about like our grandfather's mom died from tuberculosis when he was 12. And he's talking about talking to his mom when she's on his she's on
that
a
shit
deathbed.
only in the fucking 1800s. Typically.
Yeah.
Tuberculosis.
Tuberculosis.
What is tuberculosis?
It's like a lung disease. You
Okay.
cough like black
Is that
blood
something people
shit.
still die from?
No,
Not
today?
nowadays.
Not really?
Yeah,
no, man. not
that's
even
like some.
close.
You only hear
It's
about
like
tuberculosis.
polio. It's like polio,
Yeah.
tuberculosis. You only hear about that shit in like the late 1800s typically, and then some just like, oh shit, my great grandma died of that.
But apparently, our great grandfather, he was a phenomenal musician, which is super interesting. Never knew that until I read the memoirs. Like apparently, my grandfather was telling in his memoirs that his dad was like a prodigy when it came to like instruments. Like he could just pick up any instrument
up something,
and
yeah.
just know how to play
Isn't
it.
that amazing? That's
And he was
cool,
and he
man.
was saying, he was like, if we lived in a city, my dad probably could have been a professional musician, but they just lived in farm country, so it's kind of like everybody would just come over to the house
Yeah,
and he would
just,
just play the banjo or play the violin or play whatever, and everybody would dance. So he said the whole house is always revolved around instruments and
Right.
music.
like a young Dewey Cox.
Yeah, and it was like, and it's so interesting because my grandfather, as he says in his memoirs, he's like, I'm terrible when it comes to music and instruments. He's like, I can't play a single instrument. I tried, I can't. I'm terrible at it. But my dad was like a fucking prodigy at it, and people would always come over. And then also, you seeing our grandfather was like a super just businessman. He had all these small businesses, and he'd buy some like grocery store market shop that was like going under, and you'd buy it, and then we'd have boxing night, and then we would have
Nice.
we would have this event, and it was like this grocery
Boxing night in
stores.
the produce section.
Yeah, he's like the grocery store's motto outside. Yeah,
front. Yeah.
he's like
But you didn't move the apples to the side.
Yeah, he's like the-
inside.
They had a whole ring.
yeah they built
made,
a
like,
ring.
Dope.
They would have it was
Oh,
dude,
it seemed like life was so much simpler than
our
So
great-
simple,
Like
dude,
nobody
so
would
simple.
come in there and it's like, you need to sanction this.
Yeah,
our
yeah.
great uncle. His name was Elvis.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Dude.
Not our great uncle. That was grandfather's brother.
There are
Our
some
great,
names.
I
you
mean,
just
our grand
can't
uncle.
have
Our
anymore.
grand uncle.
You
Grand
cannot name your kid Elvis now without only because
Yeah.
like it's
Yeah,
like,
his name was
that
Elvis.
probably just used to be a common name, you know.
And our grand uncle was apparently like captain of the football team. Like all the girls wanted him, and all this stuff. And it's just interesting stories.
He talks about he's like our grand uncle. He was like the prize at their high school. Like every fucking girl wanted to be with.
'Cause he
our
was captain of the
granduncle.
football
He's
team,
captain
right?
of the football
Yeah,
team.
right.
The biggest dude, the most handsome guy, and he talks about how the woman that our grand uncle ultimately married. He's just like
She's a
he's
strong
like-
woman.
He's like she was a strong woman. He's like because not many women would want to marry a guy who. His
Could
main
have every woman.
well he could have every woman in their circle of community,
Yeah.
but he was just like, all right, like I'm gonna pick you, and then they went and lived in a log cabin, like they went
An
and lived
old log
like
cabin.
an old log cabin that is essentially like we're talking like
Yeah. We're in an old log
Yeah.
cabin in the
No
early
electricity.
1900s.
yeah, and he's
Yeah.
he's like not
Not
many
just an old,
women
like, oh wait, you don't
Yeah.
have Wi-Fi.
yeah
Like,
he's
not
like
that, not that old.
yeah he's saying
Yeah.
like
But even
not
back then-
many women would have dealt with that.
Sure.
Even
guaranteed.
back then, he said the place that he bought a farm that was like old, and like he got the farm for cheap for a reason. It was like an old, washed up, terrible house that needed a ton of repairs, and he was like, Elvis bought that house, and the woman put up with it. It was kind of like
I think like women
story.
Well, I suppose it all depends on when you were, or how you were raised. Like my grandma's tough as fuck too. Like if it's like, I'm sure my grandpa's got stories about how grandma started bitching about whatever. Just the way it
Right.
is. But when it comes to that, yeah, some women are just there's a different standard. If you have a standard of living that you're used to. Right, you couldn't take some posh girl from the middle of London at that time, and then it's like she falls in love with your grandfather on some crazy sock hop night or whatever, and it's like, oh my god, you want me to live, and it turns into some like fucking sitcom.
Yeah,
I don't know, but
even for the early 1900s, like 1920s, rural Tennessee, you could tell that he was just like this. My uncle or my granduncle and his newlywed bride took a significant like downgrade.
yeah,
Even for that time, significant downgrade
Both of them
in
did. Okay.
in like living standards.
I wonder if that was almost
Yeah.
you would like that more though as a man, right? It's like, okay, I'm gonna see if she really wants to stay around.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
right. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
Well, he was
you
like,
stuck
I'm
with me
sure-
through like,
Yeah.
through a winter when
in a winter in a terrible
where-
log cabin. Yeah.
in an uninsulated log cabin. I can just imagine like how that thing was put together.
Yeah, that thing essentially like he was living the exact same way that colonial Americans
Sure.
lived. Like no
Yeah.
electricity. You have like he talked about. He's like people back then, like they were living like that the exact same way for thousands of years. Like we're talking about the only technological innovation was like
Probably the
a
door.
the gun got a little bit better.
And-
Like,
and
so
also
the
he's-
hunting rifle got a little bit better, but that was about it.
And he said the automobile. He's like, I don't remember there not being automobiles, but yeah, there wasn't that many of them.
But dude, he even says that after the war, so 1945, 46, he comes home and his dad, our granddad, Bob Burcham, had an automobile when he left, but then he couldn't afford the parts or couldn't get the parts for his automobile, so went back to just riding a horse to work every day.
Horse and buggy.
So
Yeah.
horse and
Yeah,
buggy.
no problem. Same
So,
thing here. It's like,
yeah.
you know what? I lost my T-Money card. I'll just
I just ride a horse.
Yeah, I'll just take my bike. Well, take my bike would be the equivalent
Yeah.
of, I'll just walk. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like coming
no big
home
deal.
from the war, you just saw all kinds of crazy shit, and it's like your dad is like back to riding a horse. It's like your dad went from driving a car, and it's like things are getting better, things are improving. It's like America's on the up. And it's like no, it's like just ride a horse.
Yeah,
You know what
sure.
I mean?
It's still
It's like,
still a possibility.
What?
Not too.
Are we fucking Amish? You know what I mean? It's like.
Oh wait, that's how. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm misunderstanding. That's how he felt. He felt it's like, what, what is this?
I don't think he definitely didn't look down on our grandpa, but that was just the times.
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
It was
It was
like
just kind of the norm still.
it
It
was like-
still wasn't too crazy to
it
be
was an option.
riding a horse.
Yeah, it was like
yeah.
it's like you could drive a car or you
Yeah.
could just have a horse.
What was it? He was talking about, like what you said is such a small town. I thought this was like so interesting. So there was a picture of our great grandfather. So my grandfather's dad's brother and his wife, and what I thought was so amazing and what was so interesting was, so my grandfather's parents, right? It was, the dad and the wife, and then there was a picture of my great grandfather's brother and my great grandmother's sister. They were also married. So it was like
wait.
there was two families.
Okay,
and they
just married each other's siblings.
each family had a boy and a girl, and they just both married.
Hey, perfect, good. We don't have to think about this.
Yeah, it was like you got a guy, I got a girl, and then you got a girl, I got a guy, and it was like boom,
Sure.
boom. It was like
guess, yeah.
simple fucking living.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, nice, right? It's like, well, I
Yeah.
just don't know if he's the one.
It's like, well,
Does he have a 5-year plan?
yeah.
It's like, no, he's got a brother though. So and your sister
you're-
needs a husband, so that's what you're gonna do because
Yeah,
I've got to go
yeah.
milk the cows.
It was so so
We done here?
small.
Yeah, we're done, right? Hold on, hold on. We got your life planned out. Are you okay? Good, let's go. But that's how it was, though. I think that's like the cool thing about marriage, like. At least just making a commitment like that. Like
Yeah.
we get so caught up, and it's like, oh, am I ready to?
Is he the one? You know, is she the
sure.
one?
Yeah, for sure. And where it's
Like
just
she's
like,
there's
how
the
about-
only option.
how about just make a decision? Okay, you know what? Fine, I'll just fuck it. I don't look. I gotta be honest. You're not attractive to me right now, and I don't love you. But you know what? If you're gonna live in this cabin with me for the next 3 years,
We can make it up.
you know what? I'm not leaving you.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
He said
there's
some
something nice about that.
he said some crazy
Those marriages
stories.
worked
For sure.
until someone died.
Yeah, until someone
Right.
died.
Dude, our great granddad Bob Bertram, he had like 3 wives, and we're like, what? And it's like
It's
one
just because
one
he was a
died
widower a
one
couple
died of
times.
like
Yeah.
polio, one died of fucking tuberculosis.
Yeah, dude,
And I'm
he
just
wasn't
like,
just like-
what? Like
Yeah.
I'm just sitting there, I'm just like, these diseases don't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He's like, well, the first.
It's like out of a Western film.
Yeah,
you know what I
Right,
mean?
huh?
And it was funny. He's talking about like my grandfather.
Then there was a.
He's talking about he's over a summer. He's trying to make some money. I thought there was 2 stories. One story where he said there was a pig that had a litter and there wasn't enough teats to go around for the litter, so there was a runt. There was the runt pig, and the family that owned the pig, they were all too busy to hand feed the runt. So my grandfather James, he was like, I'll buy the runt and I'll hand feed the runt. So then he bought the runt of the litter. He hand fed it. It got that pig really big, really fat.
Yeah.
Sold it at the fair, and then he said he made a killing off this pig. He's like, I bought the best suit I've ever had. I bought new shoes. I
Dude,
bought
that
a
was like
good
some
dinner.
clout, too. That was
He's
the-
like, and I had change.
Yeah, right.
he was like best investment I ever did. You know.
Yeah.
And so he says that story, and then he says another story. He's like, okay, my brother Elvis, he gets a farm. You know, I tell him like, how about I grow some crops on your farm and then I sell it at the market. And then I think it was like peas. So he's like I'm working my ass off. I'm working so hard that I even get like a rash in between my crotch, and I have to go to the local kind of like fat old dude who doesn't have any teeth for advice, and he tells me to get some lard and put it between my legs to help the rash. He work like a charm.
remedy, right?
He's
For
like
sure.
the
Dude,
old,
that sounds good to
He's like
me.
the old fat dude,
like,
no
oh, I'm
teeth.
chafing.
Yeah, he's like
Just Crisco.
yeah. He's like the old fat dude knew
weird, but it
exactly what he was
works.
talking about. He's like, it worked. He's like, after the whole summer of working my ass off.
Yeah.
He's like, also my brother being the dick that he is, he gave me like the stubborn mule. So he's like, I'm working my ass off, and this fucking horse just like gives up like halfway through the day's work. It's like, come on, man. Like, we got to finish plowing this field. And the horse is like, no.
That's
no.
funny. The
And
horse
he's
is-
like, I'm dealing with this stubborn horse, or this stubborn mule. I can't remember, oxen or something.
Dude, just
this
anything-
animal just didn't want to
Dude,
work.
if an
And he's
animal
like,
can
you
be stubborn,
fucking
yeah, right.
lazy ox. I'm trying to put something together here. You know what I mean? And there goes the camera. But he's like, I'm trying to get these, peas raised and everything. And he's saying I had to invest money on these buckets to ship the peas. And then he's like, and after all my summer's work, the peas only. He's like, it was a bad summer rainfall wise, and he's like, I only made enough money to pay for the buckets. So he's like, I worked my ass off all summer long, and I made absolutely nothing. He's like, I didn't lose anything, but I didn't make anything.
So those are funny moments in life too, where you feel like you're running so hard, you're running, and you're digging in life, and then you just realize that you were running on a treadmill that whole time, but you still got some exercise from it. Like, meaning, like, he got paid not in money, but he got paid in just like, you know what,
you know what he said he learned? He's like, so the takeaway,
something funny.
He's like, the takeaway from this is don't work for your own family.
Yeah, right,
he's like,
well,
he's like,
but
don't.
He had to go through all that. Yeah. How funny is that?
He's like, so I learned not to work for my brother
when
anymore.
He probably could have just followed his instinct. He's like, I don't know. He's like, what's his brother's name?
Elvis.
I don't know. Elvis is a dick. I don't know, but he's my family. Maybe I should. Boom. But his gut instinct to begin with was like,
he's like, I'm not working for Elvis anymore.
That's hilarious. He had to go through all of that just to realize it's like, you know what? I probably should have just went with my gut there.
Yeah, and I'm just reading these stories. I'm just thinking like this is such a different life than what I've ever experienced. I mean, I grew up in fucking we grew up in Southern California in fucking suburbia, so and then Los Angeles.
I think it's best classified as that, just different, not better, not worse, just different.
Dude, our trials and tribulations have to do with.
Well, they're modern and they're more nuanced. Dude, I don't even want to say more nuanced, but they're just different. They're just different.
Dude, our trials and tribulations between us is just from the fact of like our mom being religious Republican and our dad being Democratic, and our mom wanting to homeschool us and holding us back a year, and then having to make new friends when we finally did go back to school 2 years later, going back and forth between two different ideologies in households,
right? On bi-weekly. Or bi-monthly, whatever it was, whatever the business. Bi-weekly.
And just like that was our trials and tribulations.
Right.
So
you just can't. Where if you just grew up where it's like, no, just take this again. If you just had a plan set for you, where it's like, this is what you're gonna do, son. You're gonna mine coal. You're gonna use my hat, just like I used my father's hat, and he used his father, and his father used his father's. Yeah. It's like you didn't have that planned out. It's like I'm seeing this duality in life right here where I don't even know how to masturbate yet.
Yeah, he saw essentially he lived through a life that people had lived for thousands of years, and then through his own lifetime, he saw the war change the world, and then he saw the world change post-war. He saw like he grew up where riding a horse to work was norm.
Right.
And having an automobile was like a caveat or an extra, like, oh, the Johnsons have a car. You know what I mean?
Right.
He grew up seeing the life before that, after that, and all the way past us landing on the moon.
Last 50, right. He probably, when did he die?
All the way to the
All the
internet.
way to computers? Yeah.
He lived till like 2012.
Unbelievable, man.
Yeah. He was on the internet before he died. He had a computer, and he typed all of his memoirs on a computer.
Great point.
And
unbelievable.
Dude, we're talking like.
Well, but what's going to be that for us though?
Dude,
like
imagine
ours
how
are
crazy
coming
shit's
in a
gonna
much
be.
more like that's a very macro level change of events and change of circumstances that the world has, but now it's much more micro level. Like everything is just changing at a crazy rate, but it's just getting smaller changes that are making things like we not only have the internet, but we have the internet like you just click on something and you're there, right? We have everything, a cell phone or a watch that can just recharge itself. Like, oh wow, the watch was invented. Well, now we got a watch that can just recharge itself using your own body heat.
Yeah.
Right. So everything is just. What else is?
We get all these not really like not based on inventions, but like the fact that we live in Korea. Why? Because Korea is a small nation surrounded by all these major world powers, and so Korea has a need to learn English, and so we get to move here and teach English, and our whole lives are shaped by just simply that. So it's like our whole lives are shaped by the fact that English-speaking nations won the war.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so,
right.
Yeah, it's like imagine
Yeah.
history is so fucking crazy, but also just to see how my grandfather saw all the change, and then to see it, to reflect and be like, okay, how is my life is this because of
that.
this, and this. You know
Well,
what I mean?
and it's still happening right now. It's still being written.
Yeah.
Like history is never just past tense.
It's never done.
It's always present.
Yeah.
It's always going to be future. Yeah, that's weird. That's weird. Man.
So, it's crazy to see our granddad do such a. He got, in his own way, he got to just see so much of the world and explore
and share it though. Like these are
And
stories
share
that
it,
could have been just gone away with. There are some other
Could've been,
grandfathers that probably had amazing stories, guaranteed that had
Dude,
amazing stories as well.
now
and
I'm
they're
sitting there and I'm just like, why didn't
gone.
Bob Bertram write about World War One? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so now I'm sitting there
Man, I
thinking
feel
like,
that could-
shit.
that
I
could
want
just
to.
be a-
And our great I think it was like our great grandfather was in the Civil War.
You know
what I mean?
Yeah.
That could be a really cool. I don't know. I'm sure there are people that do that. I think they're called authors, but I think like just people who go around and they collect. They just collect
Stories.
those. Well, it's just funny though because there's nothing that you could. There's no way that you could argue with the fact that it's like, oh, well, that's not a meaningful cause to
Yeah.
go ahead and share that stuff. But it's like there literally should be people like fucking Jehovah's Witnesses knocking at these veterans' doors, like, "Hey, can we share your story?
Yeah, tell us our stories. Let's keep them down."
No, but just not even just because there's a lucrative, it's not
Opportunity.
A disadvantage. Yeah,
It's just
but
something that
like,
should be remembered.
It's important.
Yeah.
This is really important stuff.
What was it? One of the things, speaking of stories,
gotta wrap this up.
we do got to wrap it up. But one of the things that my grandfather talks about was that grocery store that our great grandfather owned. He said it just kind of turned into like a hangout. And he said a bunch of the older dudes, like that guy with no teeth, who kind of turned into like the village, mystique when it came to like herbal remedies or whatever.
The shaman.
The guy who was like, yo, you should put some of this lard on your rash and it'll work, like that guy. He didn't have a single tooth
Right,
in
the
his mouth.
Midwestern shaman.
Yeah, he said his bottom lip could go like up over his nose or whatever.
Oh my God, I know the exact
yeah,
face.
Yeah, he was saying, he was like
Popeye looking.
he was like at that grocery store because it turned into a hangout. He's like, if I was an author, I could have been like a New York Times bestseller. Just the stories around the campfire that these old timers would tell. He was like, the stories that were told at that grocery store like were. They could have gone down in history as like the greatest stories, you know what I mean?
Awesome. Yeah,
But
just
he was
you were a
like,
fly on the
I'm
wall
not
or
an
something.
author. I don't remember the stories, but I just remember them being amazing.
And life changing.
Yeah. And that's one of the things he talks about is he talks about like do-overs in life. And he talks about, he's like, there's a bunch of times in life where I wish I could do a do-over, but there's no do-overs in life. He's like, there's so many stories I wish I remembered. There's so many times I wish I could do again and do better. But there's no do-overs in life. And you just gotta, learn from the wise people who give you the wisdom, saying like, this is an opportunity to learn something, and then you just blew it, And he said that over and over again in the memoirs of times like that. So yeah. Anyway, Grandpa James, love you. Rest in peace. Bob Bertram.
Grandpa Bob Bertram,
Rest in
great Grandpa
peace.
Bob
Wish I
Bertram.
knew
rest
you.
in peace.
I knew him as Robert, but
But anyway, we're gonna wrap this up. Great memoirs, Grandpa. And if anybody cares to read the memoirs, we'll link it in the description. So with that, adios. We're gonna keep drinking, keep smoking our cigars. It's been Friday night. We're in Korea. This is Sticks and Stories. Check out our other videos and podcast episodes. Adios. Anything
All right,
else?
thanks.
Adios.
All right.
Yeah, hey.
We're gonna
follow
end
me
it
on
that.
Tinder.
Follow me on Tinder. Okay, adios.